The story kicks off with a massive, evil dragon reigning terror over a peaceful empire. The humans fight back, and a squad of elite warriors alongside the first emperor finally defeat the beast, but not before it casts a nasty curse on them. Centuries later, the current crown prince takes the stage. He is known as the most powerful person in the empire's history. But the ancient curse completely wrecks him, turning his looks and personality into a literal monster after his coming-of-age ceremony. Suddenly, we cut to Ciela enjoying some tea with her friend Tyrell. Tyrell blushes as she admits she has a secret. She bashfully confesses that she has a lover. Ciela drops her jaw in absolute shock. She forces a smile and congratulates her friend, playing it totally cool on the outside. You see, Tyrell is the epitome of innocence and the actual female lead of this world's novel. She is destined to use her holy powers to save the cursed crown prince. But if she is already falling in love, that means the original plot is kicking into high gear. And for Ciela, that means she might be hitting the grave real soon. She absolutely loses her mind at her desk, panicking over the timeline speeding up. Fiancé notices her zoning out and asks if she is okay. Ciela snaps back to reality, sweating bullets as she realizes her doom is approaching. The problem is her fiancé, Tyrell Essett, who is the absolute worst villain in the novel. He is a pathetic cheater who harasses the female lead until the crown prince eventually executes him. But because they are married, Ciela is destined to be dragged to the guillotine right beside him. She refuses to die an unjust death just because she transmigrated into this body. So to change her fate, Ciela previously rescued Tyrell from the slums. She helped the heroine enter high society, planning to just break up with her trash fiancé and live peacefully. Back in the present, Ciela snaps to attention. She leans in and eagerly asks Tyrell which noble family the lucky guy belongs to. She takes a sip of tea, formulating her guesses. She confidently asks if it is the crown prince. Tyrell looks completely confused and denies it. Ciela rattles off a list of top-tier nobles, but Tyrell shoots down every single one. Ciela's brain practically short-circuits trying to figure out who it could be. Tyrell nervously twiddles her thumbs, hinting that it is someone Ciela doesn't get along with. Ciela narrows her eyes, deeply confused by this clue. She tells Tyrell it's fine and urges her to just spit it out. Tyrell makes her promise not to get mad. Ciela promises not to interfere, totally unprepared for the bombshell. Tyrell finally confesses that her lover is Lord Essett. Ciela freezes, realizing Tyrell just claimed her own fiancé. Internally, Ciela is screaming, wondering why the heroine would fall in love with absolute garbage. A memory flashes back of Essett aggressively throwing the doors open. He grabs Tyrell protectively and glares daggers at Ciela like she is the bad guy. Ciela is left utterly speechless by his sheer audacity. To make it worse, Essett coldly demands that Ciela break off their engagement. Tyrell clings to him and hits Ciela with the ultimate toxic bestie line, asking if they are still friends. The fact that the female lead is officially in love means the tragic story has officially begun. Later that night, Ciela stands on her balcony, completely unable to sleep. Tyrell's fake apology echoes in her mind like a bad headache. She thought befriending the heroine would save her neck, but the plot completely blindsided her. She bursts into fiery rage, wondering why she is surrounded by cheating scumbags. Frustrated, she remembers getting cheated on in her past life too, cursing her awful luck in both worlds. Ciela is absolutely raging, dropping censored curses left and right into the night. Realizing that screaming alone is totally pointless, she sighs and decides to head inside to catch some ZS. Suddenly, she spots a magically glowing letter resting on her desk. She slaps her forehead, suddenly remembering she completely ghosted a message she was supposed to reply to. She groans, recalling the crown prince had asked her to play matchmaker so he could naturally bump into Tyrell. Sweating bullets, she panics over how to possibly respond to this royal request. Grabbing her quill, she decides that dropping the cold, hard truth is her only way out. She drafts a formal apology, respectfully stating she cannot help him with his little crush. Then she bluntly spills the tea, writing that his future wife is currently messing around with her fiancé. Satisfied with dropping that absolute nuke, she sends the letter off with a flick of magic and stretches out. But almost instantly, a reply shoots back, with the prince acting super confused. He reveals the palace is already discussing his engagement to Tyrell, leaving Ciela completely mind-blown. Her brain does backflips trying to process how Tyrell is supposed to marry the prince while simultaneously clinging to her trash fiancé. She throws a massive fit, absolutely fed up with everyone's tangled love lives and mixed signals. She considers confronting the cheating duo directly but hesitates. She just squishes her face in sheer, unadulterated frustration. Refusing to be a doormat like she was in her past life, she slams her hand on the desk, deciding enough is enough. Knowing this drama is going to spiral, she furiously starts writing another letter. She drafts a formal greeting directly to the crown prince. The scene cuts to the prince in his dimly lit room, reading her spicy follow-up. He reads the cold, hard truth that his alleged fiancé is currently tangled up with another man. Back in her room, Ciela bites her pen, pondering her next move as she writes a request to meet up. Throwing her hands up, she decides if everyone else is acting completely out of pocket, she might as well join the chaos. She literally proposes they start their own fake affair to get back at their cheating partners. The next morning, the sun shines brightly over the peaceful estate. But inside, Ciela looks like a deflated balloon, totally miserable because the prince has left her on read for an entire week. She aggressively cringes in bed, rolling around and kicking herself for sending such an unhinged proposal. She wraps herself in a blanket like a burrito of despair, convinced she's going to be thrown in prison for disrespecting royalty. But to her surprise, no royal guards show up, he simply ghosted her. She tries to cope, figuring since Tyrael is the novel's protagonist, her toxic behavior will just get a free pass in the name of love. Ciela sarcastically claps for the female lead buff, wishing Tyrael luck with her messy harem. Suddenly, a knock interrupts her plotting and her maid, Mi, asks to come in. Mi enters carrying a tray, looking super worried that Ciela is skipping meals again. She sets down a plate of strawberry sandwiches and Ciela softly thanks her. Ciela takes a bite, trying to hype herself up that she at least ditched her trash ex when she notices something. She completely panics when she sees Mi silently shedding tears. Mi cries her eyes out, heartbroken that her lady is suffering while the cheating duo is living their best life. Suddenly, Mi's sadness turns into blazing fury as she literally erupts in flames of anger, vowing to destroy them. Ciela awkwardly tries to calm her down, but her maid is totally locked in. Mi leans in and confidently declares she found the perfect way to absolutely annihilate those two. Ciela looks down in absolute shock at what her maid just handed her. It is the shiny emblem of the notorious Seal Love Manipulation Guild. Mi explains that despite the sweet name, it's actually an underground hit squad famous for exposing affairs, and their Yelp reviews are 5-star fire. Without hesitating, Mi aggressively grabs Ciela by the arm and drags her away to exact their revenge. She screams at her lady to hurry up and get dressed for war. Sometime later, the two arrive at the guild's massive estate, and Mi suddenly tells Ciela to be on her guard. Wearing cloaks to hide their identities, Mi whispers that the guild master is heavily rumored to be dangerous. She adds that if he gets mad, he literally turns people into living dolls. Ciela shudders as Mi mentions he drags cheating scumbags straight into his basement for torture. Right as Mi warns her to be careful, a handsome man suddenly pops out of nowhere, cheerfully confirming that the wild rumors are actually kinda true. Ciela and her maid jump back in shock, totally startled by the sudden appearance of a stranger. The handsome guy smirks and introduces himself as the very guild master they were just gossiping about. He casually welcomes them, assuming they've come to submit a request. He adds a catch, stating that the guild is strictly for clients only. Hearing this, Mi gets cold feet and begs Ciela to leave, worried this underground spot is way too dangerous, but Ciela confidently brushes her off. Ciela promises to call a carriage once she's done, assuring her maid that she has everything under control. Reluctantly, Mi asks the master to take good care of her lady. He cheerfully agrees to attend to her with absolute sincerity. Before leaving, Mi grabs his hands and fiercely warns him not to go easy on the cheaters, claiming Ciela's feelings are too fragile. Ciela shoots them an annoyed glare, wondering who exactly has fragile feelings, while the master just awkwardly nods along. Trusting him to properly punish the scumbags, Mi waves goodbye and heads out. With the maid gone, the guy politely gestures for Ciela to follow him inside. But the second they step into the library, the guild members bow down and address Ciela as their master. The guy casually asks how they should handle her cheating fiancé and his mistress. Ciela coolly tells them to leave the trash duo alone for now. Instead, she slaps her fan against her hand, demanding to know why her top-secret guild is suddenly the talk of the town. Tossing aside her cloak, Ciela completely shifts her vibe, stepping up as the true, majestic boss of the underground. The guy, whose real name is Later, sweats bullets, explaining that expanding the business was just way too lucrative to pass up. He literally hits the floor trembling like a leaf, begging to resign before Ciela can punish him. Trying to save his own skin, Later points out the lavish new master's room he decorated using their massive profits. Ciela isn't having it. She glares down at him, demanding hard evidence of her fiancé's cheating rather than fancy furniture. She strictly reminds Later of their ultimate goal. She only created this shady guild in the first place to find a bulletproof reason to break up with Duval. Even though Duval's infidelity is the worst-kept secret in high society, mere rumors aren't enough to officially cancel a noble engagement. Later stands up and admits they hit a wall because Duval is using a rival dark guild to scrub his tracks. He offers to infiltrate the enemy base. Ciela immediately vetoes that idea, saying it's way too dangerous, especially since Duval already asked for a breakup anyway. She orders him to just keep looking for normal evidence, but notices Later hesitating like he's holding something back. Later finally admits that an unusual guest has been visiting them for days, and worse, the guy knows Later is a fake. Ciela completely panics, wondering how her secret identity got leaked and why this mystery guy wants to see her. Later explains the guest received a crazy proposal for a revenge affair and came here for advice. Hearing the words revenge affair, Ciela's heart basically stops. She slips on a mask, trying to convince herself there is absolutely no way the crown prince would visit a shady alleyway guild. Just to be safe, she activates a transformation artifact to disguise her voice and appearance. She is absolutely terrified of the scandal that would drop if a duke's daughter was outed as a mafia boss. Taking a deep breath, she grabs the door handle to finally meet this mysterious VIP. But the moment she walks in, she gasps in pure shock. The room smells strongly of roses, and sitting casually in the chair is a very familiar blonde man. Wearing a mask of his own, the handsome guy looks up and asks if she is the guild master. Ciela carefully confirms her identity, keeping her guard up. She stares at him, mentally noting his ridiculous good looks that would make him the talk of the town. Then she locks onto his striking golden eyes and the puzzle pieces instantly snap together. It is him. The guy doesn't waste any time and immediately orders her to take off her mask. Ciela hits him with a flat refusal, totally thrown off by his audacity. Refusing to play his game, she angrily turns on her heel, threatening to walk right out if he's just going to be bossy. Realizing he messed up, the guy quickly stands and offers a sincere apology. He adjusts his mask, admitting he was just rudely curious about her identity. Ciela accepts his apology, noting his intense perfume scent is suddenly gone, and asks him to get straight to business. He agrees, demanding absolute secrecy. He sits back down and explains that someone he knows recently got a wild letter from a young lady. Ciela starts sweating as he details how the letter exposed a cheating fiancé. The story is sounding way too familiar. She completely short-circuits as he mentions the letter proposed a revenge affair. She realizes he is talking about her exact letter. Ciela's brain absolutely melts. Not only is the guy sitting in front of her the actual crown prince, but he literally came to her underground guild to ask for dating advice on the fake affair she just pitched to him. Ciela starts sweating, realizing the disguised guy in front of her might actually be the crown prince. But she quickly calms herself down, reasoning that the prince in the original story is totally locked in. Since she knows he is supposed to be engaged to Tyrell, she completely rules out the possibility that this VIP is the royal heir. The disguised prince snaps her back to reality, asking if she's still listening. He calmly takes a sip of tea and admits he's curious why this mysterious woman would randomly propose a revenge affair. He leans in, asking for her expert opinion on the matter, which completely flusters Ciela. She tries to play it cool, suggesting the lady might have just misunderstood his relationship status. But the prince wonders out loud if the lady actually considers him special, dropping some serious main character riz. Hearing this, Ciela realizes the answer is already teed up for her. Thinking about the massive bag of gold coins he paid for this consultation, she turns on her ultimate capitalism smile and eagerly gasps that the young lady must think super highly of him. The prince smirks, seemingly buying into the hype. He confidently decides he might just accept this wild proposal. Ciela instantly feels a twinge of jealousy toward her own alter ego, absolutely amazed that he swallowed her fake story hook, line, and sinker. But then he asks the golden question, demanding to know the exact identity of the lady who sent the letter. Ciela deflects like a pro, warning him that if this lady or her fiancé ever visit the guild, he absolutely shouldn't trust a single word they say. The prince leans in dangerously close, asking if she senses any impure intent in his questions. Before she can properly answer, his eyes glow bright red and he commands her to stand up using magic. He casts mind control, ordering her to forget everything he just said. Ciela's body completely freezes up, and she panics as he steps in closer and catches her. She realizes she can't move a single muscle while he reaches directly for her face. She starts internally screaming, knowing that if he removes her mask right now, her secret identity will be totally exposed. But to the prince's absolute shock, his mind control magic totally glitches out and fails. Ciela instantly plays dumb, acting completely clueless and asking what he just said. Realizing his trick failed, the prince awkwardly excuses himself and promises to visit again. Once outside, he smirks like an absolute menace, admitting he can barely control his curiosity and decides to watch her closely. The next day, Ciela is back at the guild, complaining to Later about a massive headache. Later sighs, bringing up how her maid interrogated her the day before. He asks why she didn't just tell her maid the truth to avoid the unnecessary drama. Ciela dramatically hugs a little doll, putting on a total soap opera performance. She claims she's just a fragile, weak-hearted girl who can't handle confrontation. She completely leans into the delicate noble lady act, pretending she'd cry if she even stepped on a flower. But Later completely shatters the illusion, pointing out the creepy voodoo doll she's aggressively poking. He points a shaking finger at the toy, demanding to know what she's plotting. He absolutely loses it, yelling that nobody makes a human-shaped doll unless they're placing a hex. Ciela squishes the doll defensively, swearing up and down that it's totally curse-free. Later isn't buying it. He points out the insanely specific details: blonde hair like melted gold, thin ears, and distinct lips. He panics, warning her that if the person this doll is modeled after finds out, they'll completely freak. Ciela nervously grips the toy, knowing he's absolutely right. The doll is a dead ringer for Renos, the crown prince and main lead of the novel. But she stubbornly refuses to admit it, claiming it's just a generic design. She hugs the doll tightly, laughing nervously and insisting she just made it because he's her favorite character. Later tells her to knock off the nonsense, announcing he has to step out for a bit. Ciela immediately gets suspicious and threatens to end him if he dares to follow her. Later, Ciela hits the shops and buys out the store, hoarding maps, compasses, and migration guides. She thanks the shopkeeper, realizing that sticking around the capital is basically a death sentence. She knows that no matter what she does, a toxic love triangle is destined to form between Tyrell Duval and the prince. So instead of waiting around to be dragged to the guillotine, Ciela decides to pack her bags and absolutely dip out of the empire. Ciela arrives back at the estate, heavily weighed down by her shopping bags as her maid rushes over. Ciela drops a total bombshell on May, revealing she is planning to flee the empire for good. May completely freaks out, asking if Ciela's parents would ever allow such a wild escape. Before they can argue, the butler suddenly interrupts to announce a surprise guest. Ciela is totally confused since she wasn't expecting company at all. She starts walking to the lobby, wondering if her cheating fiancé is causing more drama. As she hands her bags to May, she tries to figure out who could be visiting. She straightens her posture and orders the butler to let the guest in. Instantly, she spots a shock of bright blonde hair, followed by a pair of piercing golden eyes. It is the crown prince himself, standing there like an absolute model with a massive bouquet of red roses. Ciela internally panics, realizing her peaceful afternoon is officially ruined. She remembers leaving him on read for an entire week, wondering if he tracked her down for revenge. The butler asks if she knows this handsome stranger, and Ciela awkwardly confirms it to dismiss the staff. The butler bows and leaves the two alone in the grand hall. Ciela turns to formally address her royal guest, but the prince smoothly cuts her off, presenting the giant bouquet. Ciela forces a smile and thanks him, suggesting they move to the living room. Taking a seat, the prince remarks on her hospitality, playfully asking what she would do if he were a dangerous intruder. Ciela sweats, knowing she can't blow her cover and admit she recognizes him as royalty. She smooth talks her way out of it, claiming a guy bringing flowers couldn't be a threat, but the prince suddenly notices her massive pile of luggage. Catching her off guard, he cuts right to the chase and asks about her revenge affair proposal. Realizing the gig is up, Ciela formally greets him as His Highness, while he notes it's strange she played dumb earlier. He apologizes for the sudden visit, but Ciela plays the perfect socialite, flattering him endlessly. She claims his beautiful gift totally makes up for the surprise intrusion. The prince calmly takes a sip of his tea and pauses. He stares down at the teapot, building intense suspense. Ciela's life flashes before her eyes, completely expecting to be executed over a bad brew. She nervously blurts out that it's a special oriental tea that tastes different to everyone. Fortunately, the prince absolutely loves it and jokes about taking it to the palace. With the tension finally clear, Ciela drops the act and switches to a formal business tone. They properly introduce themselves to officially start their new partnership. Without warning, the prince completely closes the distance, playing with her hair and asking if they're in love. He leans in dangerously close, completely invading her personal space. But then he suddenly pulls back looking shy, leaving Ciela totally bewildered. She internally facepalms, realizing this guy alternates between totally shameless and weirdly bashful. Shaking it off, she gets down to business, laying out the timeline for their fake relationship. She explains the contract will strictly last until she successfully breaks her engagement with Duval. Internally, she knows the prince will never actually leave Tyrell, since his curse requires her purification powers. The prince looks down, asking if her ultimate goal is just to win her cheating ex back. Before she can answer, he turns his back to her, preparing to drop a massive curveball. He quietly asks what would happen if he didn't actually have a fiancé in the first place. He wonders if their entire revenge contract would instantly fall apart. Ciela is super confused, bluntly pointing out that a fake affair makes zero sense if he's single. The prince immediately backpedals, hiding his blushing face and telling her to completely forget he said that. Regaining his composure, he officially accepts her contract, agreeing to play the part until his fiancée returns. They formally shake hands to seal the deal. But the prince notes that if they are going to fool everyone, they need to establish some physical boundaries. He suddenly intertwines their fingers, asking if holding hands is allowed, which she approves. Before she can even blink, he smoothly pulls her in by the waist, absolutely turning on the charm as their fake romance officially begins. The prince leans in way too close, boldly suggesting they practice acting like a real couple right now. But before Ciela can even process it, he abruptly pulls away and announces he's leaving her totally baffled. He flashes a subtle, satisfied smile as he heads out the door. Before he completely leaves, Ciela stops him to add one final request to their fake dating contract. Meanwhile, over at the bustling Rima salon under the bright afternoon sun, a group of noble ladies is busy spilling the absolute hottest tea about Duval getting a new mistress. They whisper excitedly behind their fans, clearly living for the drama. One lady points across the room, noting that the scandalous new couple is literally right there in the open. We see a quick glimpse of Duval completely ignoring his boundaries to flirt shamelessly with Tyrell. The ladies heavily gossip about how crazy it is that Tyrell is backstabbing Ciela after Ciela literally carried her into high society. They wonder if Ciela has any clue about the massive betrayal happening right under her nose. The girls mutually agree to keep their mouths shut to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Suddenly, Ciela politely chimes in right from behind them, scaring them half to death. Looking at the cheating duo, Ciela recalls a recent moment when Duval shamelessly blew her off to protect Tyrell. She remembers his cold shoulder, deeply feeling the sting of his blatant disrespect. Her eyes darken as she fully embraces her villain era, ready to make them feel the exact same humiliation. Back in the present, the prince escorts Ciela and smoothly bids her farewell in front of everyone. Tyrell awkwardly greets Ciela, pretending like she hasn't been stealing her fiancé this whole time. Ciela just hits her with an icy stare, asking if there's anything else they even need to discuss. As Ciela boldly walks right past her cheating ex and fake bestie, the gossiping ladies quickly invite her over to sit. She gracefully joins the girls, absolutely dominating the room's energy. Sipping her tea, Ciela internally criticizes Tyrell's reckless and obvious choices. Unable to contain her curiosity, one of the girls leans in to ask a burning question. She asks who the incredibly handsome blonde man was that just dropped Ciela off. Ciela hits them with a flawless lie, giggling that he's just a close friend from the temple. She casually adds that this temple brother happily escorts her absolutely everywhere now. She smirks, knowing this mysterious new man completely wrecks Duval's fragile ego. Later that evening back at the estate, Ciela searches the halls for her loyal maid, May. She paces around, frustrated that her current level of scandal still isn't enough to force a broken engagement. Sitting at her vanity, she realizes she needs to turn up the heat. Holding an invitation from the crown prince for a shopping date, she resolves to strike harder. Suddenly, May bursts in, aggressively demanding to know what on earth Ciela is doing hanging out with another man. Ciela casually asks where she heard that, and May shrieks that the rumors are going totally viral. May begs to know who the guy is, terrified that Ciela is ruining her reputation with some random scrub. Ciela steps right up to her maid and drops the hammer. With a mischievous grin, she boldly confirms that she is absolutely having an affair. May completely loses her mind, asking why Ciela would ever sink to Duval's level of trashy behavior. They bicker back and forth until May finally snaps. Surprisingly, May gets completely fired up and passionately declares she fully supports the revenge affair. But May strictly argues that Ciela's new man better be top tier, ridiculously handsome, and filthy rich. Suddenly, the crown prince reveals himself, casually leaning against the doorframe like he owns the place. Ciela turns ghost white, realizing he's been standing there listening to their entire unhinged conversation. Completely oblivious to the royal presence, May continues her rant, yelling that this mystery guy is totally unqualified. May aggressively claims that even with flowers, this random dude is nothing compared to the glorious crown prince. Ciela aggressively facepalms, literally dying of secondhand embarrassment. The prince steps forward with a brilliant smile, smoothly introducing himself to the dumbfounded maid. He bursts into genuine laughter, totally amused by how fiercely May protects her lady's honor. He smiles warmly, joking that if Ciela is going to have an affair, it definitely ought to be with him. Ciela nervously fiddles with her dress, but the prince assures her he isn't offended by the maid's rant at all. He locks eyes with Ciela and smoothly flexes that he is the only man in the empire who actually meets May's sky-high standards anyway. Ciela realizes the prince is just a guy who wants his ego stroked, so she decides to turn her social skills up to 11. She goes all in, dramatically calling him the most handsome man she has ever seen in the entire world. She hilariously warns him that his looks could literally knock someone unconscious, which completely flusters him. Red in the face, the prince covers his eyes and begs her to stop. Ciela mentally cheers, thrilled she successfully found his hidden, cute side. The two soon arrive at a high-end boutique, stepping out of a fancy carriage looking like absolute royalty. The grand salon sparkles in the afternoon sun as they make their way to the entrance. Inside, the boutique owner greets them with a massive, welcoming smile. But the second she recognizes Ciela standing next to a stunning mystery man, she completely freezes in panic. Ciela pieces it together instantly. Seeing the owner terrified confirms the nasty rumors. Her trash fiancé, Duval, is already inside matching outfits with Tyrell. With a villainous smirk, Ciela decides to absolutely wreck their little date and expose them in front of everyone. She links arms with the prince, loudly announcing they need to look for some clothes. The owner sweats bullets and desperately lies, claiming the store is suddenly under maintenance. Ciela just smiles and calls out her blatant bluff. Intimidated by her aura, the nervous staff finally caves and lets them pass. Ciela struts into the shop looking like an absolute boss, ready to strike hard and make Duval squirm. A worker nervously points out their newest collection, trying to ease the massive tension. As they browse, the prince quietly asks if she comes here often, and Ciela casually nods. The prince realizes the staff was definitely trying to stop them from bumping into her ex, but notes that causing a scene is exactly why they are here. To make their fake romance more believable, he asks what she should call him in public, refusing to let her use his formal title. He smoothly tells her to just call him by his first name, Renos. He drops a devastatingly handsome smile that could melt butter. Ciela happily agrees, calling him Renos with a totally natural, radiant smile. Suddenly, the door slams open. Duval aggressively storms over, demanding to know what she is doing here. He completely loses his cool, aggressively pointing at Renos and yelling for an answer. Jealousy completely consumes him as he furiously asks if this new guy is her lover. Without missing a beat, Ciela grabs Renos by the arm and leans in close. She hits him with a sassy smile, confirming they are super close and asking if he's blind. Instead of getting mad, Duval suddenly acts like a tragic hero, dramatically sighing and saying he lost. Ciela is completely confused by his bizarre reaction. Duval pushes his hair back, spouting absolute nonsense about doing whatever she wants, totally dismissing the girl he literally brought on a date. He grabs Ciela by the shoulders and insanely claims she is the only one he desperately loves. Ciela is utterly disgusted by his garbage lies. He tries to gaslight her, acting like he is just a devoted boyfriend fighting for his girl. He leans in, fiercely declaring his undying love while Ciela desperately tries to pull away. Ciela literally recoils, flat out calling him crazy for this unhinged performance. Renos instantly steps up, radiating deadly energy as he asks Duval if he's lost his mind. Duval gets in his face, aggressively telling the random guy to back off before things get ugly. Renos narrows his glowing golden eyes, totally unfazed, and dares the punk to try it. Before the boys can throw hands, Ciela jumps between them to break it up. She glances at her ex, deeply weirded out by why he is suddenly obsessed with acting like a jealous lover. Then she spots Tyrell standing quietly in the back. Her eyes widen as she takes a closer look at the dress Tyrell is holding. Tyrell looks nervous, innocently asking why Ciela left so abruptly the night before. But Ciela's mind is racing. She realizes the outfit Tyrell is matching is an engagement dress. She stares at the duo in sheer disbelief. Duval literally brought his side piece to buy an engagement dress while simultaneously confessing his true love to Ciela. Absolute psychopath behavior. Unaware of Ciela's internal rage, Tyrell stammers, wanting to ask a burning question. Pointing a nervous finger, Tyrell finally asks the million-dollar question: who exactly is the handsome blonde man? Ciela glances from Renos's cold stare to Duval's fake outrage, totally exhausted by the drama. She looks back at Tyrell, shaking her head at the sheer audacity of it all. Her brain completely short-circuits trying to process how Duval could juggle a fake confession while buying another girl's engagement ring. Tyrell patiently waits, completely oblivious to the absolute nuke about to drop. She stares wide-eyed at Renos, totally unaware that she just asked for the identity of the Empire's crown prince. Ciela furiously yanks her wrist away from Duval, telling him she has absolutely nothing left to say to him. Suddenly, Renos steps in, wrapping a protective arm around her waist. He glares at Duval, demanding to know where he gets off grabbing someone else's lover. He coldly tells the cheating scumbag to get lost, completely asserting his dominance. Duval snaps back, claiming Ciela is still his fiancée, but Renos points out the obvious hypocrisy of him fighting for Ciela while his side piece stands right there in an engagement dress. Tyrell nervously grabs Duval's arm, confused by his sudden outburst. Duval immediately turns his back on Ciela to comfort Tyrell, desperately begging her to let him explain. Tyrell looks at Ciela with fake innocence, claiming Duval just confessed that he still loves her. Ciela shoots her a dirty look, asking if that absolute garbage is actually true. Duval panics, instantly sweating bullets and denying he ever said that to Tyrell. Tyrell immediately bursts into dramatic tears, crying that he promised her marriage. She sobs that he swore he didn't love Ciela anymore, while Duval frantically insists Tyrell is the only one he cares about. Tyrell listens to the pathetic back and forth, completely done with their toxic soap opera. She drops a chilling smile, sarcastically calling Tyrell a friend as she completely sees through the fake tears. Duval desperately tries to drag Tyrell outside to talk in private, but she stubbornly refuses to move. Realizing this train wreck is a total waste of time, Ciela sighs deeply and tells Renos she is ready to leave. As they walk away, Ciela notes the wild irony. She feels like she just stole the protagonist's spotlight, completely wrecking the male lead in the process. Once outside, Renos casually asks how a girl like her ended up with such a massive loser. Ciela brushes it off, blaming it entirely on strict family business and arranged marriages. Renos warns her that a petty guy like Duval definitely isn't going to let her go without a fight. Ciela confidently smirks, noting that Duval was actually the one who suggested breaking off the engagement first. She cheerfully pulls out a magical recording device, revealing she has his exact words permanently logged. Renos looks at her with a mix of shock and respect, realizing she planned this absolute trap from the very beginning. Ciela suddenly pauses, remembering a massive plot hole, and asks why he was planning to get engaged to Tyrell if they had never even met. Renos looks away, casually confirming he didn't even know her. Ciela presses him, asking what he thought of Tyrell after finally seeing her in person today. She leans in close, asking if his heart beat fast when he looked at the novel's heroine. In the original story, the prince's heart was supposed to race the very second he laid eyes on Tyrell, signifying true love. Reno stares directly into Ciela's eyes and smoothly replies that his heart was racing entirely because he was with her. He smiles warmly, saying it was an absolute pleasure acting as her lover. Ciela laughs it off, claiming she was happy he called her his lover too, even if it was just a fake social maneuver. She cheerfully wishes they could finish their acting contract as soon as possible, completely missing his genuine hint. She is absolutely certain that after today's total humiliation, Duval won't be able to handle it and will finalize the breakup immediately. But the very next morning, the door to her office is violently kicked open. Duval aggressively marches into the room, totally ignoring basic manners. He slams his hands on her desk and drops an absolute bombshell. He is suddenly unwilling to break off the engagement. Ciela is completely stunned. She honestly thought he had at least a shred of rationality left. But she realizes he is just a massive man-child throwing a tantrum because he hates losing. She calmly picks up her pen, reminding him that they already mutually agreed to the split. She pulls out the magical recording device, hitting play to broadcast his own words demanding a breakup right back at his face. Duval's eyes widen as the glowing orb echoes his exact voice. Unfazed, he smoothly slams his hand down, completely crushing the magical tool into dust. Ciela barely reacts, she casually brushes it off. She totally outplays him, revealing she made plenty of backup copies. Duval grinds his teeth, absolutely furious that she is one step ahead. He switches tactics, smirking as he threatens to personally destroy her new lover for stealing her away. Ciela glares at him, absolutely disgusted by his hypocrisy, and tells him to just marry his side piece already. Duval stands his ground, stubbornly declaring that Ciela is his one and only fiancée. Hearing this absolute nonsense, Ciela covers her mouth and completely bursts into laughter. She wipes a tear from her eye, mocking his pathetic attempt to play the perfect man after getting caught red-handed. She drops her smile, warning him that if he refuses to send the formal breakup letter, she'll handle it herself and completely ruin him. Ciela glares coldly at Duval, asking if he seriously thinks his parents would ever allow him to back out of this breakup. She completely verbally massacres him, reminding him that her family literally saved his from begging on the streets. Duval scoffs, claiming this is just about money and getting deeply offended that she thinks he can't pay her back. Unbothered, Ciela drops an absolute ultimatum. He has exactly 3 days to write the breakup letter or his social life is permanently cooked. Duval fumes, but Ciela casually calls for her maid to escort the trash out. Knowing exactly how scary she gets, Duval grinds his teeth and storms out of the office. He slams the door on his way out, bitterly promising that she will regret this. As the dust settles, May peeks her head in, nervously asking if her lady is okay. May gasps, noticing a shattered glass on the floor and rushing in to check for injuries. Ciela tells her not to clean it up with her bare hands to avoid getting cut. May brushes off the concern, more focused on the fact that Ciela hasn't received a reply from Count Valton yet. Ciela sighs, explaining she desperately needs the Count's signature to legally finalize the divorce papers. Suddenly, a butler approaches and hands Ciela a freshly delivered letter. Ciela squints at the horribly messy handwriting, instantly recognizing it as Later's terrible scribbles. Later that night under the moonlight, she reads the note revealing that Count Valton is secretly trying to skip town. She urgently asks May to grab her promenade clothes, catching the maid completely off guard. With a confident smirk, Ciela announces she has to go hunt down the escaping old man. Sometime later at a sunny outdoor plaza, Ciela waits around, wondering where her target is hiding. Ciela stands beside her, noting it's been an hour and casually asking if she's bored yet. They sit together on a bench, with Ciela apologizing for dragging the prince out here on a wild goose chase. Renos looks at her with genuine concern, warning that this little bounty hunt could get dangerous. Ciela waves it off, explaining she just needs the notary's signature to officially end her engagement. Renos narrows his eyes, pointing out that the Valton and Iset families are tight, so she better keep her guard up. Renos hits him with a smooth line, claiming she'd much rather face danger with him than ever see Riz again. Renos stares at her in stunned silence, completely swept away by her unexpected Ciela. She suddenly grabs his attention, urgently telling him to follow her. They walk together as Renos randomly asks if she likes candy. He points toward a street vendor selling massive clouds of cotton candy. He casually mentions that eating sweets helps lift the mood, prompting Ciela to ask if they even have peasant snacks like that in the palace. Renos admits he's only heard rumors about it, looking weirdly excited to try some. Ciela stares at the giant ball of fluff, clearly overthinking how to eat it. Being a proper noble lady, she sincerely wonders where she can wash it before taking a bite. Renos totally plays along with her cluelessness, suggesting they wash it in the nearby fountain. Ciela smiles brightly, handing him the cotton candy and happily asking him to do the honors. Renos dips it in the water, only to watch in absolute horror as the entire treat instantly disintegrates into thin air. Ciela covers her mouth, holding back a snort as the perfect crown prince stands there looking like a confused puppy. Blushing from sheer embarrassment, Renos awkwardly realizes that washing spun sugar was a terrible idea. Ciela finally breaks character, bursting into bright laughter and admitting she was totally pulling his leg. She winks at him, calling him cute for falling for her silly prank. But right in the middle of their rom-com moment, she spots a suspicious man speed-walking up the stairs. She recognizes the glasses and brown hair. It's definitely Count Valton. Valton furiously power-walks through the alleyways, paranoid that someone is tailing him. He turns the corner and practically runs straight into Ciela, who greets him with a savage smirk. The Count recoils in fear, but Renos immediately steps out from the shadows to block his escape path. Trapped between the absolute unit of a crown prince and a furious noble lady, Valton curses his horrible luck. They forcefully relocate him to a dimly lit room, where Ciela notes how painfully hard it was to track him down. Valton nervously glances toward the door, but Renos crosses his arms, completely shutting down any chance of a getaway. With nowhere to run, Ciela sits him down for a very intense chat about signing her breakup papers. Sweating bullets, the Count nervously folds his hands and drops the bad news. He admits that if he signs her separation letter, he will start a massive, destructive war with the Marquis. Ciela narrows her eyes, fiercely asking since when the Count was so buddy-buddy with the Iset family. She sits across from him in the dimly lit room, cutting straight to the chase and asking if Duval bribed him. The Count looks away, dodging the question by saying he just hopes her relationship recovers. Ciela isn't playing games anymore. Her hands begin to glow with dark purple energy, totally losing her patience. She glares at him with menacing, glowing eyes, promising that if he doesn't want to talk, she will gladly use force. Renos watches in awe, genuinely surprised by her sudden burst of intense power. The Count literally falls backward out of his chair, absolutely terrified as dark, shadowy hands reach out for him. Before things go too far, Renos swiftly wraps his arms around Ciela from behind, stopping her spell and warning her she might faint from exhausting her magic. Ciela drops her hand, sweating and panting, completely frustrated that she let her anger get the best of her. Still on the floor, the Count aggressively whines, accusing her of abusing her noble power and bullying him just like she did during a past sermon. Feeling dizzy from the magic usage, Ciela ignores his crying, admitting she's way too exhausted to keep going and tells Renos it's time to leave. But Renos firmly holds onto her, refusing to let her walk out looking so defeated. Ciela insists she'll just go back to the drawing board and find another way. She stubbornly claims she will successfully break the engagement even without the notary's stupid signature. Renos reminds her of the harsh reality. Without that signature, even the royal family cannot legally annul the marriage. The Count cowers on the floor, pathetically hiding behind the dark magic residue still lingering in the room. Ciela shoots him one last death glare, warning him they'll soon see whether the breakup happens or not. Later, completely drained, Ciela leans against Renos as they head back. She mentally kicks herself, realizing Duval totally bought the Count off. She is incredibly grateful Renos was there to catch her, knowing she would have caused a massive disaster if she fainted. Thinking back, she remembers later doing some recon, confirming that Count Valton is a total sellout who only moves for money. Ciela had praised Later's intel skills, finally realizing just how deep Duval's bribery ran. The flashback continues with Later handing her another crucial piece of juicy gossip. He reveals that a mysterious woman recently approached the guild asking for help divorcing her cheating husband. Ciela dramatically spills the tea. The cheating husband in question is none other than Count Layla himself. Ciela had been shocked, especially when Later revealed the Count's secret mistress was Layla Iset, Duval's own sister. She had immediately demanded solid evidence to back up this insane claim. Later smoothly handed over a magical orb containing a direct recording of the Count whispering sweet nothings to Layla, explicitly proving the affair. Back in the present, Ciela snaps out of the flashback, completely sick of dealing with everyone's trashy secrets. She realizes that if the Count is secretly hooking up with Duval's sister, it makes perfect sense why he's blocking the breakup and protecting the Iset family. During another flashback, Later cheerfully points out that destroying the Count is going to be way easier than they thought. Ciela smiles brightly, praising Later as the absolute MVP of their underground operation. With all this scandalous ammo, she feels totally confident that they can wrap up this messy case in record time. The scene shifts to a fancy museum event, where an announcer is proudly showing off rare, valuable artwork. Ciela casually slips through the crowd, keeping a low profile as she scans the room. The announcer specifically shouts out Count Duval Isset, thanking him for his massive financial support, while Duval totally eats up the applause. But as everyone claps, Duval's sister Layla makes eye contact with Count Valton across the room, exchanging a super suspicious, knowing look. Suddenly, Ciela approaches a dignified woman in a green dress, officially confirming she is Countess Valton. Ciela quietly uses a magic tool to broadcast the scandalous audio recording right next to the Countess. The orb loudly plays her husband confessing his love to Layla and planning a secret honeymoon. The Countess's eyes widen in absolute horror as the Count instantly starts sweating bullets, caught red-handed. The entire crowd immediately starts whispering, instantly connecting the dots and realizing the Count and Lady Isset are having a massive affair. The high society guests are completely scandalized, wondering how the two cheaters could ever show their faces in public again. The Countess trembles with rage, glaring at her pathetic husband as he desperately tries to pull her away to talk in private. The Count forcefully grabs her arm, violently dragging her out of the room while she cries out for help. Just in time, a pristine lace fan snaps open, completely blocking their path. Ciela steps out from the crowd with a triumphant, villainous smirk, cheerfully declaring that it's finally her turn to speak. Defeated, the Countess sits quietly, looking totally crushed as she accepts that her marriage is officially over. Wiping away her tears, she vows to immediately end this humiliating charade. She stands up, announcing she needs to head home to prepare the divorce papers, but Ciela quickly stops her. The Countess turns around, completely surprised that Lady Labyrinth is the one intercepting her. Ciela formally greets her and drops her fan, politely but firmly demanding they have a very important chat right now. Back in the drawing room, Ciela calmly sips her tea while discussing the museum disaster with the Countess. She casually asks the Countess to confirm that her husband is indeed having an affair. Knowing Ciela was the one who publicly blasted the evidence, the Countess formally admits she wants a divorce. The Countess solemnly recounts her miserable life, revealing how her husband drank heavily and gambled away his sanity every single day. She wipes away her tears, exhausted by the constant physical and emotional abuse she endured. She explains that the Count refuses to let her go because without her noble standing, he'd revert to being a pathetic commoner named Nix. Ciela stops her right there, pointing out that a despicable man like him won't just roll over, even with his infidelity completely exposed. She warns the Countess that a desperate cornered rat will do absolutely anything to exploit his wife's weaknesses. Ciela leans in, making it clear the Countess is in grave danger but confidently offers a lifeline. The Countess looks deeply confused, asking why Ciela would go out of her way to help a virtual stranger. Ciela plays it cool, admitting that securing the Count's notary signature for her own breakup is her top priority. But as Ciela looks at the broken woman in front of her, she feels a massive pang of empathy, realizing their situations are painfully similar. Staring into her tea, Ciela admits she intimately knows the agonizing sting of being betrayed by someone you trusted. She kindly asks the Countess to just let her help. The Countess's eyes soften with genuine gratitude, quietly thanking Ciela for her unexpected kindness. Ciela smiles warmly, instructing the Countess to carefully remember everything she is about to say. Meanwhile, Duval sits alone in his dimly lit office, furiously trying to figure out where his grand plan completely derailed. He recalls how Ciela suddenly completely changed her attitude, completely rejecting his attempts to get her attention. He grinds his teeth, absolutely seething over the sudden appearance of the mysterious blonde guy who stole his fiancée. Watching them together totally wrecked his ego, leaving him utterly baffled at how confidently Ciela moved on. In a massive fit of rage, he violently sweeps all the papers off his desk. Suddenly, his sister Layla bursts into the room, practically in tears as she begs her brother for help. Layla completely panics, yelling that Duval promised the Countess was too stupid to cause problems, but now their scandalous affair is entirely public. Duval angrily rubs his temples, barking at her to shut up because he already has a massive migraine. He mutters that if the Count actually gets divorced, his own shady business deals will be totally ruined, so they desperately need a fix. Duval paces the room, realizing they need to make a drastic move before things completely fall apart. He notes that if the government seizes the evidence crystal, the Count will instantly lose his noble title. He decides they have to find a dirty way to protect the Count's position. Layla's eyes suddenly light up with a wicked idea, suggesting they beat the Countess at her own game. She explains that the Countess, Arya, suspiciously stays locked in her room all the time for absolutely no reason. Layla smirks, suggesting that even if Arya doesn't actually have a lover, they can easily frame her for having one. Duval catches on, flashing an evil grin as he agrees to set a devious trap that will completely strip Arya of her power to accuse the Count. Back at the estate, Ciela watches happily as Countess Arya confidently signs her name to a legal document. Arya hands over the freshly signed papers, keeping her promise to notarize Ciela's split from Duval. Ciela C takes the papers with a bright smile, but gently stops the Countess before she can leave. Ciela seriously advises her to stay hidden at the Labyrinth estate for now, warning that going home could end incredibly badly. Arya hesitates, feeling guilty for intruding, but Ciela assures her she only needs to lay low for exactly 2 weeks. Ciela smiles brightly, promising that in just 14 days, everything will be completely resolved. Later that night, Ciela drags herself into her bedroom, utterly exhausted from playing 4D chess all day. She completely faceplants onto her bed, glad her plans are working but feeling a weird nagging sensation that she missed something important. Suddenly, her eyes snap wide open as it hits her rhinos. She totally realizes she never properly thanked the Crown Prince for backing her up against the Count and playing her fake lover. Snuggling into her pillow, she mumbles about how cute he was when he got flustered. She quickly shakes it off, playfully warning herself that catching feelings for a guy like him in this cutthroat world is a fast track to getting used. Still, she can't help but laugh, remembering how easily the almighty Prince fell for her cotton candy prank. Sitting up, she resolves that she can't just leave things hanging. She hates the feeling of owing someone a favor. She heads for the door, deciding she will just casually ask if he needs anything to officially settle their debt. But as she opens the door, a white envelope suddenly flutters down from the frame, catching her totally off guard. She picks it up, completely puzzled as to who could have possibly delivered a message this fast. The purple-haired Countess reads over a mysterious letter, a tiny smirk playing on her lips. She crushes the paper, realizing her enemies are way more predictable than she thought. Her maid happily notes that her skin is practically glowing these days. Turns out, dumping her toxic husband was the ultimate skincare routine. Based on the intel she received last night, she knows exactly what's coming. Her eyes narrow as she prepares for the main event. The maid tells her not to worry, reminding her that this is the legendary Lavany's castle. The Countess steps out in a stunning dark gown, completely unfazed by the upcoming danger. Meanwhile, 2 sketchy intruders sneak through her dimly lit halls. They pull back a fancy tarp, thinking they've hit the jackpot. The thieves can barely believe their eyes at the hidden loot. But suddenly the Countess steps out of the shadows, casually scolding them for working the night shift. The thieves freeze as dark, sinister energy starts oozing from her body. She flashes a wicked smile, totally unbothered by their presence. Panic sets in as the intruders try to bolt, but the doors are magically sealed shut. They stare in absolute horror as the shadows rise up around them. The Countess unleashes the true, terrifying power of her bloodline. Looking like an absolute boss, she tells the boys it's time to play. The thieves stumble backward, completely losing their minds with fear. One of them yells at his partner, furious because they were told the Countess was an easy target. Before they can even argue, a dark force grabs their attention. Thick, shadowy tentacles slither up from the floor, wrapping around them. It's an absolute nightmare as dark spears rain from the ceiling, completely trapping the duo. The Countess sighs, disappointed that these goons didn't do their homework before breaking into a magic castle. She quickly pieces together that her trash ex-husband is behind this pathetic raid. She shakes her head at his sheer audacity. Her eyes glow with vengeance as she vows to give Count Valentine a reality check worse than divorce. With a single word, she summons Cerberus, a massive 3-headed hellhound. But instead of being terrifying, the beast acts like an oversized, affectionate puppy around her. She wonders if she'll ever get used to having a mythical demon dog as a pet. It turns out her family has a legendary history of taming dragons and controlling evil souls. But using this power drains her mind and body, which is what originally caused her chronic illness. Cerberus pants happily, waiting for a command. Trying to hide her exhaustion, she orders the hounds to take out the trash. After just 1 hour in her mind-bending shadow labyrinth, the intruders are completely cooked. Cerberus playfully nudges her as she orders the men brought forward. The assassins are shaking like leaves, absolutely traumatized by what they saw. She glares down at them with cold, piercing eyes. She threatens to toss them right back into the nightmare realm if they don't spill the beans. Meanwhile, her ex-husband sips wine, smugly thinking his assassination plot worked. He gloats to himself, completely oblivious to the storm coming his way. Suddenly, the doors burst open and royal guards swarm the room. The arrogant count throws a tantrum, screaming like a toddler as they corner him. The guards don't care, arresting him on the spot for intimidation and a laundry list of crimes. Watching from a nearby window, the countess and her maid enjoy the show as he's dragged away. But her gaze darkens, knowing this is just the beginning. Her maid looks confused, wondering what else she has planned. The loyal servant suggests they make a harsh example out of all the open cheaters. The countess looks out into the night, ready to completely dismantle her ex's life piece by piece. Cut to the count sitting in a cold jail cell, muttering to himself, totally in denial that he just got wrecked. Count next sits in his dingy jail cell, violently muttering about how much he hates his ex. Suddenly, his current wife, Arya, approaches the bars. His face immediately lights up, completely convinced she's here to save him. He desperately asks if she brought enough bail money to get him out of this hellhole. But Arya just stands there in dead silence, looking at him like he's an absolute clown. Without batting an eye, she drops a massive bomb and flat out asks for a divorce. He starts sweating bullets, trying to gaslight her into thinking his crimes were just a tiny misunderstanding. Arya isn't having it, telling him all the evidence of his shady deals is heading straight to the government. Then she slides him a piece of paper and his eyes practically bulge out of his head. It's a property transfer. She tells him he gets to keep the family gold mine while she takes the castle and the title. Nex bursts out laughing, calling her a total idiot as he scrambles to sign the paper. He eagerly slams the signed document down, thinking he just hit the jackpot. He gloats that a fancy title means nothing compared to the limitless wealth of a gold mine. But his victory lap is cut short when Countess Ciela steps out of the shadows. She gives him a slow clap, congratulating him on his brand new pile of debt. Nex is visibly confused, refusing to believe he just got played. Ciela flashes a wicked smile, casually reminding him that debts are technically considered properties too. She drops the hammer, revealing that she secretly borrowed a massive amount of money under that exact estate. To make things worse, the gold mine has been shut down and is already being sold off. Having totally checkmated the greedy count, Ciela and Arya turn their backs and walk away. Nex absolutely loses his mind, screaming and slamming against the bars like a trapped rat. Outside the prison, the two ladies finally take a breath of fresh air. Ciela warmly thanks Arya for playing her part in the ultimate revenge scheme. She genuinely wishes Arya a happy, toxic-free life moving forward. Arya smiles, amazed at how Ciela always finds the most savage solutions to her problems. But as they prepare to head back, Ciela's vision suddenly starts to blur. Without warning, she completely collapses onto the cobblestone like a ragdoll. Cut to later, Ciela slowly opens her eyes as her maid hovers over her in a panic. The maid reveals she's been knocked out cold for several days. Ciela clutches her head, dealing with the worst magical hangover of her life. Turns out, summoning that shadow labyrinth took a massive toll on her body. The maid mentions that while she was unconscious, someone tried to kick down the door to see her. It was the Count's mistress, causing a massive scene in the hallway. Ciela sighs, incredibly annoyed that this woman is still breathing her air. She figures the mistress is probably crying about the massive fine she owes. Because Ciela sued them for 1 billion gold, basically dropping a financial nuke on their entire bloodline. She groans, simply too exhausted to deal with peasant drama right now. She casually notes that their little affair just cost them 3 generations of bankruptcy. Later that night, Ciela is trying to sleep but hears a strange rustling noise. She feels a chill in the air and wonders if she left her window open. She turns around and is totally shocked to see the blonde prince standing right by her bed. He awkwardly explains that he snuck in because he just had to clear up a misunderstanding. Ciela is so out of it she actually thinks she's hallucinating him. Looking up at him with a soft smile, she fully commits to the dream logic. She pats the bed, boldly asking His Majesty to come sit next to her. The prince gets super flustered, realizing this is probably a terrible idea. But Ciela leans into it, whispering that she can't hear him and he needs to get closer. Panicking, the prince tries to dip, saying he only wanted to make sure she was okay. But Ciela pouts, demanding to know why Dream Him is playing hard to get. Completely defeated by her cuteness, the prince slowly sits on the edge of the bed, nervously promising he has no bad intentions. The prince looks down, slightly embarrassed, softly asking if his sudden appearance scared her. Ciela points out that he literally just spawned on the third-floor balcony out of nowhere. Still convinced she's dreaming, she jokes about him flying up there. The prince casually confirms that he did. Her eyes light up in absolute shock. She immediately asks if he's a secret wizard, but he clarifies that flying is just a special ability of his. Looking at him with sparkly eyes, she begs him to show her how it works. The prince awkwardly stammers, caught completely off guard by her excitement. He looks away, quietly admitting he can't exactly do it right this second. When she asks why, he vaguely mentions that it's a bit complicated. Suddenly, Ciela starts coughing like crazy, her magical hangover kicking back in. The prince immediately rushes over to support her, ordering her to stop talking and save her strength. Deciding to just rip the band-aid off, he confesses that he didn't fly here like a bird. He leans in and admits he actually flew here by transforming into a full-blown dragon. Ciela's brain basically short-circuits. Seeing her stunned face, he promises to show her but warns her to stay close once he shifts. He softly assures her there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Ciela gives him the warmest smile, completely unfazed because she absolutely loves dragons. She tells him it's been her childhood dream to see one up close. Hearing this, the prince blushes so hard he looks like a tomato, totally melting under her gaze. As she waits, Ciela remembers how the history books always describe dragons as terrifying, evil monsters. She pictures a massive, shadow-covered beast breathing dark fire. In the legends, one roar from a dragon could instantly turn an entire castle into a pile of rubble. But then the prince transforms and he's literally a tiny, pocket-sized baby dragon. Ciela covers her mouth, absolutely dying from how cute he is. She pokes his squishy little face, struggling to believe this tiny guy is supposed to be an evil monster. She jokes about how the legends say he wiped out armies with those little baby wings. The tiny dragon looks up at her with big eyes as she asks to pet him. He scoots closer, unable to speak in this form, totally letting her scratch his head. She rubs her cheek against him, officially obsessed with her new scaly best friend. Just to test him, she playfully asks if he can breathe fire. She lists off acid and ice, but the little guy just squeaks and flops around. Treating him like a stuffed toy, she hoists him into the air like Simba on Pride Rock. He flails his little wings in a total panic until she gently pulls him back down, laughing. But the fun is cut short as a massive wave of dizziness hits her again. As she slumps onto the bed, the tiny dragon immediately climbs up to comfort her. She pulls the covers up, asking the little guy to stay right by her side. The mini dragon snuggles into her chest, and they both drift off to a peaceful sleep. Meanwhile, miles away, an arrogant noblewoman sips tea, enjoying a lavish southern vacation. She sits on a sunny balcony with a sharply dressed man, living their absolute best lives. The man smugly notes that they've been on vacation for 2 weeks now. The woman smiles, completely oblivious to the massive storm brewing back home. As he pours more tea, the man decides it's finally time to put their greedy plan into motion. He confidently states they'll organize Ciela's marriage the second they return. The woman giggles, thrilled at the idea of controlling the wedding. They gloat about how marrying her off will automatically filter the Count's endless wealth straight into their son Gerald's pockets. Completely delusional, they agree to officially lock in a wedding date. But suddenly, a messenger bird lands on the balcony, carrying an urgent letter from the estate. The woman casually opens it, expecting normal, boring updates. Instead, both of their jaws drop to the floor in absolute horror. They completely lose their minds, screaming as they read about the divorce, instantly nuking their entire plan to steal the wealth. The blonde heroine Tyriel reads the official divorce papers, absolutely thrilled. She clutches the document, thinking she's finally won the ultimate prize. Convinced Count Duval will be overjoyed, she starts daydreaming about their perfect future together. She even starts planning their engagement party and stressing over which dress to wear. Without hesitation, she barges right into Duval's office, only to be met with a cold death glare for entering without permission. Confused by his vibe, she brings up Ciela's divorce and eagerly asks about their engagement. Duval looks at her like she's lost her mind. He stands up, completely shutting down the idea of them ever being a couple. Tyrael starts panicking, reminding him of his promise to be with her once Ciela was out of the picture. Duval just chuckles, bluntly admitting he only used her to get Ciela's attention. He drops a massive reality bomb, telling her she was nothing more than a convenient tool. Completely wrecked, Tyrael drops to her knees in absolute disbelief. Tears streaming down her face, she begs to know if he still loves Ciela. Desperate, she even offers to act as Ciela's replacement if it means staying with him. But Duval isn't having any of it, hitting her with a harsh and definitive no. She pleads that she can change her entire personality to match what he wants. Disgusted, Duval calls her a massive pain in the neck and turns his back. He cold-heartedly orders his guards to toss her out like trash and permanently ban her from the estate. Meanwhile, Ciela is taking a peaceful garden stroll with the prince, who asks how she's recovering. He gently reaches out and places his hand against her forehead. He smiles, relieved to feel that her dangerous fever has finally broken. Ciela's face turns bright red as she realizes her dream of him nursing her was actually real. She remembers him and his tiny dragon form staying by her side through the entire night. Trying to play it cool, she blames her blushing on the warm weather and says she's just happy to see him again. The prince locks eyes with her, totally turning on the charm. He steps incredibly close, making her heart skip a beat. He smoothly tells her that he wants her to stay right by his side. To top it off, he gently grabs her hand and gifts her a beautiful bracelet. He calls it a congratulatory present for her divorce, and she absolutely loves it. They sit together in the sunny courtyard, and Ciela asks how he's handling the messy drama with Tyrael. The prince admits the situation is a bit complicated right now. He explains there are some annoying political obstacles, but he wants to prioritize his special contract with Ciela. She happily agrees, reminding him that protecting each other was their deal from the start. He promises to handle all the frustrating background politics so she doesn't have to stress. Ciela smiles, feeling completely reassured by his solid support. The prince gives her a warm look, genuinely thankful for her partnership. She playfully asks if extending their contract was the only reason he visited today. In response, he hands her a fancy wooden token, an invitation to the upcoming Crimson Moon Festival. Ciela gasps, realizing she completely forgot about this major national event because of her messy divorce. Suddenly, a wave of panic hits her as she remembers a huge plot point from the original novel. Lore states that the Crimson Moon awakens the terrifying power of the evil dragon. To keep the beast calm, the royal family throws a massive festival to reassure the public. But according to the original story, the prince is supposed to lose control this year, transform into a dragon, and absolutely nuke the area. The original plot relied heavily on Tyrael's heroine powers to calm him down. But since Ciela totally derailed that storyline, she starts sweating bullets, wondering if preventing a disaster is now entirely on her shoulders. The prince notices her stressing out and softly asks if she's feeling sick again. She quickly denies it, but in her head, she's frantically debating if she should just lock him in a basement for the weekend. Snapping her back to reality, the prince signs some paperwork and casually asks if she'll attend the event. Ciela puts on a fake smile, pretending she isn't internally screaming about a dragon apocalypse. But then the prince smoothly shoots his shot, asking her to go on a festival date with him. Ciela covers her face, completely flustered because this incredibly dangerous dragon prince is getting way too attached to her. Ciela clutches her chest, terrified that her changes to the timeline might literally doom the entire empire. The prince gazes at her softly, completely understanding what's stressing her out. He promises to make sure nothing bad happens, asking her to just trust him. With a gentle smile, he formally asks if she'll be his date to the festival. Suddenly, Ciela notices something familiar pinned to his fancy outfit. It's the messy little embroidered ribbon she made. She gets super flustered, begging him to take it off because it looks so poorly made. But the prince proudly refuses, claiming her handmade accessory belongs in a museum as a national treasure. Red in the face, she admits she only made it to repay him for the expensive bracelet. He smiles, genuinely touched, telling her it's more than enough. As they stroll through the lively festival, Ciela brings up her worries about his magical medicine. He confidently reassures her that the meds easily let him keep his dangerous dragon powers in check. Breathing a sigh of relief, she decides to drop the stress and just enjoy the date. Out of nowhere, a loud bell rings, announcing the start of a special festival performance. A guy outside the theater hands out flyers for a play about the legendary evil dragon. Ciela hesitates, not really wanting to watch it, but the prince playfully nudges her forward. They grab seats in the crowded theater with the prince looking perfectly content. He whispers that they can just catch a quick glimpse, leaning in super close. The heavy curtains finally open to reveal the glowing stage. The play reveals a shocking twist. The terrifying evil dragon actually had a human lover. The story claims this evil woman used the dragon's power to try and conquer the world. The villagers in the play furiously accuse her of being a manipulative witch. Then in a brutal scene, the humans completely pack her up, executing her right in front of the dragon. The narrator explains that losing his lover made the dragon completely lose his mind and obliterate the empire. Ciela watches in awe, realizing this wasn't some heroic warrior tale but a horribly tragic romance. The play shows the 5 heroes finally defeating the beast, but right before he dies, he drops a massive curse. He curses the soul of Arzentime, dooming the royal bloodline. As revenge for his murdered lover, the dragon vows to haunt their family forever. Ciela pieces it all together, realizing this 1,000-year-old curse is exactly what the prince suffers from today. She sits back, overwhelmed by the idea of a dragon loving someone so fiercely for a whole millennium. Deep down, a small part of her actually envies the woman in the play. She wonders what it would feel like to be loved that intensely by a mythical creature. To have a completely unbreakable, eternal devotion. Her mind wanders, picturing the handsome golden dragon sitting right next to her. Suddenly, the prince gently slides his hand over hers, completely snapping her out of her daydream. She jumps like a startled cat, yelling at him internally for being a totally smooth pervert. The play finally ends, and the audience claps as the actors take their bows. As they leave, the prince teases her, guessing she was having a sweet dream, which is why he grabbed her hand. Flustered, Ciela aggressively denies it, claiming his touch had absolutely nothing to do with it. The prince just laughs, totally unbothered by her calling him out. Walking under the glowing festival lights, he asks if the show bored her. He teasingly points out that she definitely took a mini nap during the performance. The sun starts setting as they wander into a quiet, scenic park. Completely out of the blue, the prince confesses that the play actually made him jealous. He says he envied the evil woman because she had a dragon who loved her forever. Looking incredibly serious, he steps closer to her, ready to admit something huge. Suddenly, heavy footsteps crunch against the gravel behind them. It's Count Duval, and he looks absolutely unhinged, glaring at them as he says he's been looking for her. Ciela is not having it. She stares him down with ice-cold eyes, asking why her toxic ex is stalking her. Duval hesitates, looking completely obsessed and ready to crash their perfect date. Count Duval stomps over, boldly demanding to have a word with the prince. He glares at his royal rival, angrily blaming him for absolutely ruining his life. Duval aggressively grabs the prince's shoulder, mocking him for desperately chasing after his ex-wife. Ciela isn't having it. She steps right in and yells at her toxic ex to back off. But the prince stays cool as a cucumber, calmly telling Duval he's all ears. Ciela tries to intervene again, worried this confrontation is going to get ugly. The prince gently grabs her hand, instantly soothing her panic. He gives her a soft look, reminding her that he has everything completely under control. He asks her to go wait for him, promising he won't take long. Once she's gone, the prince turns his full, undivided attention back to the trash count. Duval starts running his mouth, mocking the prince's outfit and asking if Ciela had to buy it for him. Acting like a total clown, Duval offers to pay him off just to stay away from her. But mid-insult, an overwhelming, terrifying aura completely paralyses him. The crimson moon glows in the background as Duval drops to his knees, literally crushed by the heavy magical pressure. The prince coldly agrees with him on one thing: no one else is ever getting near Ciela. Duval is sweating bullets, finally realizing he's messing with the wrong guy. With his eyes glowing a sinister red, the prince admits he could easily snap him like a twig right here. But he holds back, knowing a messy murder would just upset Ciela and ruin their date. He fiercely commands the trembling Count to get on his feet. Flashing a terrifying glare, he tells Duval he's giving him one single chance to live. He orders the pathetic noble to get lost. Before he decides to stop being so merciful. Completely wrecked and humiliated, Duval slinks away into the shadows. The prince watches the crimson moon, thinking he handled that perfectly. But suddenly he clutches his chest as a blinding pain hits him out of nowhere. Flexing his aura just triggered his curse, but he figures a quick dose of his medicine will fix it. Meanwhile, Ciela paces on a balcony, assuming Duval is just out there throwing a temper tantrum like a standard villain. But an uneasy feeling starts creeping into her stomach. She looks around, noticing the garden is way too quiet. The silence is actually deafening. She realizes she hasn't heard a single shout from her loudmouth ex. Knowing Duval, he definitely should be screaming his lungs out right now. Fearing the absolute worst, she dashes back out into the night to find the prince. She searches frantically, her heart racing as she scans the empty garden. Suddenly, she spots the prince's fancy coat discarded on the ground. She drops down to inspect the clothes, completely baffled by why they're just lying there. A massive, terrifying shadow slowly creeps over her shoulder. She screams in absolute horror, bracing herself because she thinks the giant evil dragon has officially awakened. But instead of a monstrous roar, she hears a tiny, high-pitched squeak. She slowly opens her eyes and sees the baby dragon looking totally embarrassed. All of her panic instantly vanishes as she stares at the tiny prince fluttering in the air. Before she can process it, her maids come rushing out to check on her. In a total panic, Ciela stuffs the baby dragon into her dress and awkwardly shouts that everything is fine. The maids stare in utter confusion, pointing out that she's currently clutching a man's discarded clothes. One of them gasps, totally misreading the situation, while Ciela stammers that they only held hands. The maids instantly start swooning and gossiping about her scandalous romantic date. Extremely embarrassed, Ciela practically shoves them out of her room and slams the door. Out in the hall, the head maid strokes her chin, fully aware Ciela is hiding something huge. Back inside, Ciela leans against the door, letting out a massive sigh of relief. She unbundles the coat and apologizes to the tiny dragon, telling him the coast is finally clear. Ciela lets out a deep breath, softly calling out the prince's name. She looks at the tiny dragon sitting on the table, saying she has a million questions but needs to fix this mess first. Since he can't speak, she slides a pen and some paper his way. She leans in close, gently encouraging the little guy to write down his thoughts. The dragon struggles with the giant pen but manages to scribble down a single word: kiss. Ciela immediately shakes her head, thinking he's just being a massive flirt. But the baby dragon frantically writes more, suggesting they just delay things until he naturally transforms back. Ciela shoots that down, asking if a kiss is literally the only way to reverse the spell. She realizes the real issue: he can't exactly swallow his human-sized medicine in this tiny body. She wonders if she should alert the palace. The dragon violently scratches a big no onto the paper. He explains that absolutely no one, not even the emperor, knows he keeps his human consciousness in this form. Ciela asks why he's the only exception to the rule, but the little guy just writes that it's a secret. She pieces together that the old history books are completely full of lies. The dragon never actually lost his mind. Ciela sighs in relief, glad he isn't about to go on a mindless rampage and wreck the estate. The tiny dragon pants heavily, totally exhausted from hauling that giant pen around. Realizing he has nowhere to hide, she offers to let him stay in her room. The dragon blushes bright red, completely shocked by the invitation. She points out it's the safest option, and she can always use her magic if things go sideways. But before they can plan any further, a loud knock echoes through the door. It's Mai, the head maid, cheerfully announcing it's time for laundry. She bursts into the room, totally catching Ciela off guard. Mai freezes, staring blankly at the tiny winged creature in Ciela's arms. Ciela sweats bullets, desperately trying to come up with a believable excuse. But before she can say a word, the baby dragon gives a cute little chirp. Mai's eyes widen, completely mesmerized by the little winged lizard. Instead of panicking, the maid instantly falls in love with him, assuming he's just a cute new pet. Ciela laughs awkwardly, confirming he's totally domesticated and obeys her every command. Just to prove her wrong, the dragon dramatically bites her finger, making Mai laugh even harder. Oblivious to the massive royal secret, Mai happily leaves to finish her chores. Once the door shuts, Ciela glares at the dragon, asking what his deal is. She lets out a massive sigh, thankful they narrowly avoided a disaster. She sets him back down on the desk, telling him that writing is way too slow. Instead, she comes up with a genius plan to use flashcards and signals. She draws 2 circles for yes and an opposite shape for no. She even sketches out little crying faces for when he's feeling sad or annoyed. Ciela smiles, asking if he wants to give their new system a test run. The dragon playfully nibbles her hand to agree. Satisfied with their secret language, she decides it's finally time to get some sleep. She softly scoops the little guy up in her arms. She takes him to a lavish guest room, telling him he can crash there for the night. But the dragon aggressively squeaks and clings to her dress like a Velcro pad. He hops right onto her bed, completely refusing to sleep alone. Ciela crosses her arms, telling His Majesty that sharing a bed is absolutely unacceptable. The little dragon just stares at her, busting out his ultimate cute eyes. Unable to resist, she totally caves and wishes him a good night with a soft smile. The next morning, Ciela wakes up refreshed, wondering what to feed a royal dragon for breakfast. She decides to just ask him, fully prepared for another day of secret keeping. But her butler suddenly interrupts, handing her an urgent letter from the south. Ciela recognizes her father's seal and quickly tears it open. Her face completely drops as she reads the message. Her father is on his way back, and he's bringing Elizabeth. Ciela glares at a threatening letter, reminding her that she'll be completely cut off if she ruins her relationship with her toxic ex. Frustrated, she aggressively scribbles on her paperwork. She fumes, knowing her family is doing perfectly fine without the Iset family's so-called help. She looks up at her massive bookshelves, wondering why her father is still trying to sell her off like a pawn. Slamming a stack of documents down, she refuses to just roll over and accept her fate. The tiny baby dragon looks up at her, sensing her distress. Ciela scoffs, knowing her father claims he's doing this for her own good, but she isn't dumb enough to fall for it. She realizes his true motive is to push her out so his son can take over as the sole heir. But Ciela absolutely refuses to give up her rightful title, which is why she's been secretly grinding to build her own massive fortune. She stares at her highly classified documents, knowing nobody in her family has a clue about her underground empire. The little dragon nudges her hand, snapping her out of her dark thoughts. Looking at her scaly little companion, she softly asks if he's ever felt completely defeated. She opens up, admitting that sometimes it feels like all her hard work is just resetting back to zero. Hearing her sadness, the tiny dragon steps forward and gently taps her hand. Ciela smiles, taking his little paw in hers. She takes it as a sign to keep pushing forward, treating her setbacks as a chance to find brand new opportunities. She imagines the dragon telling her to stay strong and that everything she desires will eventually come true. Completely melted by his support, she admits she really needed to hear that. Suddenly, she notices the little guy nodding off, realizing he stayed up way past his bedtime just to comfort her. She offers to take him back to his guest room so he can finally sleep. But the baby dragon aggressively squirms, completely refusing to leave her side. Ciela sighs, totally defenseless against his weaponized cuteness. She caves in, agreeing to let him share her room just for tonight. She gently tucks the little dragon in, finally finding some peace as they both drift off to sleep. But the next morning, she wakes up to find an empty bed and a note promising he'll return when she needs him. Even though he left a proper goodbye, Ciela feels a strange pang of sadness in her chest. She picks at her breakfast, totally distracted by his absence. Looking out the window, she quietly wonders when her handsome dragon prince will finally come back. Her depressing morning is interrupted when her maids burst in, hyped up for the massive imperial festival tomorrow. They bring out a stunning, jewel-covered dress, determined to make her the absolute center of attention. But the head maid notices Ciela's gloomy mood and asks why her mystery date suddenly ghosted her. Ciela nervously laughs, unable to explain that her date is literally a cursed dragon on the run. The maid gets totally fired up, refusing to let her lady mope around. She grabs Ciela by the arm, dragging her to the dressing room to show the nobles what an absolute boss looks like. Fast forward to the festival, Ciela steps out of her carriage looking completely breathtaking. As she walks in, the petty nobles immediately start whispering, mocking her for showing up alone after her messy divorce. Ciela keeps a fierce, unbothered expression as she glides past the haters. She internally smirks, knowing she's about to completely flip the script on all of them. Suddenly, the royal announcer calls out the arrival of a mysterious duke that nobody recognizes. Ciela stops and glances over, trying to remember if a duke with that name ever existed in the original story. Heavy footsteps echo through the hall as the mystery man steps into the light. The crowd parts like the Red Sea, completely intimidated by the dark-haired, red-eyed nobleman. He walks straight past the groveling aristocrats and stops right in front of Ciela. Keeping her composure, she offers a perfectly elegant curtsy. But instead of small talk, the mysterious Duke smoothly asks if they can speak in private. He escorts her out to the starlit balcony overlooking the gorgeous festival grounds. Leaning against the railing, he casually asks why a stunning lady like her showed up to the party without a date. Ciela looks down with a sad smile, admitting her partner wasn't able to make it. The Duke's red eyes gleam as he smirks, boldly asking who exactly she was waiting for. Ciela clutches her fan, her heart racing as she prepares to drop a name that could change everything. Ciela hesitates, casually dodging the question by saying her intended date just looked a lot like the Duke. Realizing this entire conversation is a giant trap, she awkwardly tries to excuse herself to get back to the festival. But the Duke shuts the door, dropping the bombshell that he was actually supposed to be her partner tonight. Ciela's eyes widen in utter shock, completely failing to process what he just said. He pulls her close under the glow of the crimson moon and softly tells her to look at him. With a gentle smile, the Duke reveals that he was always supposed to be there as His Highness Rey. Ciela's brain absolutely flatlines. She stares at him, her mind spinning as she tries to put the pieces together. He gently holds her hands, apologizing for deceiving her but explaining he had no other choice because of his curse. He promises that from now on, he won't hide a single secret from her. Leaning in close, he practically begs her to stay, whispering that he desperately needs her. He pulls her into a tight embrace, asking her to just trust him. Suddenly, Ciela catches a familiar scent in the air. It hits her like a truck. It's the exact same expensive perfume the prince always wears. She looks up at him, her heart pounding as she finally says his royal title. Breaking out of her shock, she aggressively grabs his collar, scolding him for making her worry to death. The prince gives a soft, teasing smile, asking if she was really that worried about him. She tears up, calling him a total idiot for ghosting her without any warning. Even though she tried to play it cool all week, she admits she was internally freaking out the entire time. He gently tries to calm her down, but she totally loses it. Ignoring her rant, he pulls her back into his chest, softly assuring her that he's officially back. Ciela shoves him away, flustered, realizing she was literally just yelling at and grabbing the crown prince by the collar. Pacing around the balcony, she dramatically jokes that she might just throw herself off the edge to avoid execution for insulting royalty. She covers her face, completely mortified by how casually she treated the future emperor. She nervously peeks at him, jokingly asking if he's legally obligated to kill her now. The prince just laughs, finding her absolute panic incredibly cute. He teases her, asking if it's really a crime to scold someone just because they made her worry. Ciela pouts, muttering that his personality definitely shifted when he changed his physical appearance. He leans down, agreeing that he definitely feels a little different tonight. Looking deep into her eyes, he admits that he's always wanted to find a way to truly help her. He knows she's an absolute boss who can handle anything alone, but suggests that conquering her enemies would be way easier if they teamed up. Extending his hand, he smoothly asks if she's ready to finally join the party. As they step back inside, the entire ballroom falls dead silent. The petty nobles who mocked Ciela earlier are completely gobsmacked to see her on the arm of the most powerful man in the room. A noble desperately tries to deny reality, whispering that it can't actually be her. But as they take a closer look, the absolute shock sets in. The same guys who trash-talked her immediately start bowing and stammering out pathetic apologies. Watching from the shadows, another aristocrat glares at her, furious that she managed to secure such a high-status partner. The room buzzes with rumors as everyone completely loses their minds over the power couple. Meanwhile, Tyrael wanders the ballroom alone, desperately scanning the crowd. She bites her nail, totally panicked, swearing she saw Ciela walk into the hall. She anxiously looks around, wondering where her former rival disappeared to. When Tyrael finally spots her, her jaw hits the floor. Ciela is casually standing next to the terrifying new Duke. Tyrael forces a fake plastic smile, acting like they're still best friends. But as she gets closer, she realizes Ciela and the Duke are literally wearing matching outfits. Seeing them together triggers a dark memory from Tyrael's past, back when she was abandoned in the pouring rain. She grew up in a horrible, miserable slum, convinced she would never escape that hell. That was until Ciela literally saved her life like an absolute miracle. She remembers looking up at her savior with total awe. Back then, Ciela seemed untouchable, a perfect, powerful noblewoman. Tyrael always envied Ciela's unshakable confidence, but seeing her now with the Duke sparks a brand new, dangerous wave of pure jealousy. Tyrael glares from across the room, noting Ciella's perfect posture and elegant aura. She seethes as she watches Ciela confidently stand next to a powerful new fiancé. Thinking back, Tyrael remembers a time when she desperately wanted to be just like her savior. She started copying everything, her clothes, her hair, and eventually she even tried to steal her man. But no matter how hard she tried to mirror her, Tyrael realizes she could never actually be Ciela. Snapping back to the present, she looks down at her own dress, completely humiliated that she purposely bought a matching outfit to mock Ciela, only to end up looking like a clown. Unable to handle the embarrassment, Tyrael suddenly grabs Ciela's arm, desperately asking to talk. She flashes a shaky fake smile, begging to catch up like they used to. Ciela looks at her coldly as Tyrael practically pleads for her to step aside. The crowd starts murmuring, wondering what the pure and innocent Miss Tyrael is trying to pull. Realizing this is about to cause a massive scene, Ciela sighs and agrees to step out just to escape the noise. The Duke immediately steps forward, offering to stay right by her side as backup. But Ciela gives him a reassuring look, confident that Tyrael isn't exactly a physical threat. She promises she'll be right back as soon as she hears the girl out. Plus, she casually reminds him that she's literally packed with overpowered magic if things get weird. The Duke reluctantly agrees, but tells her not to hesitate to call if anything feels off. Ciela leads the way, gracefully stepping out onto the quiet porch. Once they're alone, Tyrael puts on her innocent act, smiling brightly. But Ciela just stares at her, noticing that Tyrael literally copied her entire aesthetic right down to her expensive jewelry. Getting straight to the point, Ciela asks what kind of game she's playing. Tyrael touches her hair, proudly claiming she worked incredibly hard to look this good. She practically brags about hunting down the exact same dress Ciela bought. She nervously laughs, saying it was super hard to coordinate since Ciela only bought one specific gown. Tyrael boldly claims she deserves credit for putting in the effort to match her. Smiling like an absolute psychopath, she asks Ciela if she finally looks the part. She leans in closer, desperately wanting validation that they look like twins. She assumes everyone in the ballroom was amazed by their matching looks. Suddenly dropping the act, Tyrael pleads with Ciela to let everything go back to normal, blaming herself for the whole mess. Ciela aggressively slaps her hands away, entirely done with this ridiculous performance. She grabs Tyrael's shoulder, telling her she doesn't care about the cheating count anymore. She shoves Tyrael's hand back, ordering her to stop pretending they're still friends. Ciela glares at her, disgusted by the idea of ever returning to how things were. She calls her out, stating the obvious. Tyrael ruined their friendship to steal her fiancé, but now that her new man is useless, she's trying to crawl back. Tyrael stammers, but Ciela completely shuts her down, making it crystal clear that their bond is dead and buried. Left entirely alone, Tyrael clutches her chest, panicking about her ruined future. Ciela turns her back, asking why she would ever clean up a mess that Tyrael purposely made. Completely emotionally detached, Ciela states that if she has nothing useful to say, this conversation is permanently over. As Ciela walks away, Tyrael desperately lunges forward, grabbing her dress. Suddenly, she aggressively shoves Ciela backward toward the balcony railing. But before she can fall, the Duke materializes out of nowhere, catching Ciela right in the nick of time. Hearing the commotion, the other nobles burst out onto the balcony, completely stunned. The Duke glares daggers at Tyrael, warning her to leave before he makes an example out of her. Tyrael tries to argue that he has no right to intervene, but he scoffs, completely unbothered by her fake tears. He ignores her completely, turning to check if Ciela is okay before escorting her back inside. The crowd watches in absolute shock, immediately gossiping about how the innocent, Miss Tyrael just tried to push someone off a balcony. Standing completely alone in the moonlight, Tyrael realizes her reputation is officially cooked. She stares blankly, realizing that the Count, Ciela, and everyone else have completely abandoned her. A dark, toxic thought crosses her mind as she accepts that nobody actually loves her. Collapsing onto the cold stone floor, she looks up at the crimson moon. Seething with anger and pure jealousy, she mutters to herself that Ciela getting all the love just isn't fair. Tyrael is fuming, completely crushed that Ciela gets everything while she's left in the dust. Suddenly, a mysterious maid creeps up on her in the shadows. The maid drops a bombshell, saying a very important person wants to meet her. Tyrael is confused, but the maid's creepy vibe makes it clear this isn't just a casual chat. The maid extends a hand, promising Tyrael the love and attention she desperately craves. Meanwhile, a grand ritual to seal away evil spirits is taking place at the cathedral. Ciela attends as a founding family member, looking absolutely stunning in her dark gown. She keeps her guard up, secretly worried that Tyrael might try to pull a fast one during the event. She honestly hopes this is the last time she ever has to deal with that blonde menace. After the event, the handsome Renos notices Ciela is looking completely drained. He gently asks if the whole drama with Tyrael is weighing on her mind. Ciela forces a tired smile, admitting the chaos really took it out of her. Renos reassures her that she did nothing wrong and shouldn't stress over it. She confesses she's still on edge, totally weirded out by Tyrael's unhinged behavior. Renos tells her to clear her head and just go home to get some well-deserved rest. As her carriage finally pulls up, she thanks him for sticking around. She makes sure to show her genuine appreciation for everything he's done to help her. Renos gives her a soft, heart-melting smile, glad he could be her knight in shining armor. But as she leaves, a white-haired boy in the distance ominously senses the energy of an evil dragon. Back at the estate, her loyal maid May waits anxiously by the door. The carriage rolls in and May rushes over to greet her. Ciela steps out, looking like she just ran a mental marathon. May instantly clocks her exhaustion, but Ciela tries to brush it off as nothing special. In reality, she's barely holding it together after watching the timeline completely shatter. May quickly ushers her inside so she can finally collapse in peace. Alone with her thoughts, Ciela realizes Tyrael's actions make zero sense. She was supposed to be the beloved main character. She knows she messed with the plot, but she didn't expect the story to derail this hard. And it's not just Tyrael, the mysterious cursed Prince Lord Ray is also acting totally out of character. In the original story, his curse caused absolute havoc, but when she approached him, nothing happened. It's wild that he calmly accepted her ridiculous contract without batting an eye. He even showed up with a fake identity just to sign the deal, leaving her completely baffled. She buries her face in her hands, desperately trying to figure out what the heck he's hiding. Instead of sleeping, she heads straight to her study to organize her chaotic thoughts. May hesitatingly walks in, holding yet another letter from Ciela's annoying father. She furiously signs some papers, already knowing her dad is trying to force her into a new arranged marriage. May warns her that the family won't stop bothering them anytime soon. They're even trying to threaten Ciela through her own servants, which absolutely grinds her gears. She looks May dead in the eye and promises to protect her from her family's toxic schemes. Suddenly, her guild's subordinate Leather bursts into the room looking out of breath. He heard about the drama at the dance and rushed over, thinking it was an emergency. She calmly sips her tea and tells him to skip the gossip and get straight to business. She asks exactly how much money their secret guild has stacked up, and he proudly says enough to buy a noble title. She hands him her father's letter, explaining that while she successfully broke her last engagement, a new problem just dropped. Her dad is now trying to sell her off to the wealthy SEDUCED family. She's disgusted that her own flesh and blood is treating her like a literal business transaction. The irony is, her family has no clue she's secretly sitting on a massive mountain of cash. The catch, she made all her money running a shady underground guild, so she can't exactly brag about it. If word got out that a noble from a founding family was running the dark web, she'd be absolutely cooked. So she drops her master plan, a legal business expansion to finally bring her wealth into the light. Leather is totally caught off guard, asking what kind of crazy legitimate business she has in mind. Ciela explains she needs a small, low-key business that perfectly fits her specific conditions. Leather looks totally lost, rubbing his chin as he tries to piece together what his boss is actually hinting at. She tells him to gather the entire Dark Guild together so she can officially lay out her master plan. Later, the shady guild members huddle over her notes, looking absolutely baffled. They stare at her rough, chaotic sketches, trying to figure out if she drew a growling monster. Ciela raises an eyebrow, completely confused about why her highly trained assassins see a monster in her drawing. With a confident smirk, she reveals her grand new product for the underground guild to sell. Leather is completely flabbergasted, chicken skewers. Ciela proudly shows off a glistening, sauce-covered skewer, calling it the perfect front. Meanwhile, Leather thinks this is a massive downgrade. One of the edgy guild members sweats nervously, asking if they're seriously being demoted to street cooks. He points out that his specific skill set involves being a sketchy, introverted rogue, not a grill master. Another member dramatically bursts into tears, supposedly moved by the idea of doing honest, normal work after years in the shadows. A bespectacled guild member interrupts the crying session to ask a very practical question. He points out that the streets are already flooded with skewer stands, so how on earth are they going to stand out? Ciela smiles, glad someone finally asked the million-dollar question. She proudly states that these aren't just any ordinary chicken skewers. She hands a stick to the glasses guy. He takes one bite and instantly a literal inferno explodes in his mouth. Ciela casually explains that the secret ingredient is pure, unadulterated spice. In the background, her men are dropping like flies. Leather is sweating bullets, coughing as he asks if this is some unhinged new torture method. He wonders if she's taking her stress from the Imperial Ball out on them, but Ciela just laughs at their fiery misery. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a tiny black dragon is happily breathing literal fire. Ciela confidently steps forward, ready to brand her new culinary weapon. As her men recover from the spice hit like they just survived a boss fight, she makes the official announcement. She dramatically snaps her fan open and declares the dish will be called Dragon Skewers. Fast forward to opening day, the guild sets up a street stall with a menu featuring items like dragon horn and dragon breath. Ciela's undercover minions are rushing around the square, hauling boxes and getting the kitchen ready. Leather is practically drowning in paperwork, whining that she's working him to the bone while she plays the chill boss. Ciela strolls through the bustling streets in a beautiful blue dress, totally pleased that her plan is running smoothly. Suddenly, she hears a tiny, high-pitched beep coming from above. She looks up just in time to see a little black dragon falling straight out of the sky. She catches the little guy like a football, instantly recognizing the dark energy of Ray. The tiny dragon snuggles right into her chest, letting out a happy little squeak. Ciela looks down at him, totally melting over his adorable, oversized ruby-red eyes. She realizes he probably transformed into this tiny form to sneak out without drawing a massive crowd. After all, if the literal cursed prince just strolled into the market in his human body, it would cause an absolute riot. The little dragon gives a confirming beep. Ciela grins, asking if he wants to take a VIP tour of her brand new street business. He glances at the menu board and completely freezes when he reads Dragon Tail and Dragon Breath. The poor guy goes into full panic mode and starts thrashing around, thinking he just walked straight into a butcher shop. At the exact same time, the undercover guild members start shouting, trying to hawk their fresh dragon skewers to the locals. Ciela desperately hugs the trembling dragon, frantically assuring him it's just a marketing gimmick and not his actual relatives. She gives him some gentle head pats to soothe his nerves, and he instantly melts into her hand with a happy hum. She carries him over to the sizzling grill, promising she isn't planning on cooking him for lunch. She asks if he wants a taste test to prove it's totally safe for dragons. She confidently takes a bite of the spicy skewer herself, proving it's just good old-fashioned chicken. She holds the stick out, encouraging the skeptical little guy to take a nibble. His eyes sparkle and he happily chomps down on the spicy meat. As he eats, a little puff of flame shoots from his mouth, proving the spice level is seriously no joke. A little boy walking by points in pure amazement, yelling to his mom about the cool flying lizard eating street food. The kid is totally sold and begs for a skewer, while Ciela smirks, knowing her accidental marketing strategy is working flawlessly. A mother and her little boy step up to the stall to order a chicken skewer. The guild member smiles warmly and offers them the mildest option for the kid. The boy takes a bite and his eyes immediately tear up from the heat, making his mom panic and offer to eat it instead. She takes a cautious bite, wondering just how crazy this spice level really is. Suddenly, the kid tugs at her dress, completely hooked, and begs for another one. Even though his mouth is on fire, the flavor is just way too good to resist. The commotion immediately draws a crowd of curious onlookers to the stall. People start whispering, wondering what kind of street food has people crying but still coming back for more. Leather leans into his flashy salesman persona, hyping up the 3 levels of heat and challenging the crowd. A massive buff dude steps out of the crowd, totally taking the bait. He slams his coins on the counter and proudly demands the spiciest skewer they have. The crowd goes wild, flooding the stand with orders while desperately yelling for water. Ciela watches from the sidelines with a sneaky smirk, knowing her master plan is already working flawlessly. The stall's sign, luminous, shines brightly, marking the first major victory for her brand. Meanwhile, a group of kids spots something super interesting next to Ciela. They completely lose their minds watching a tiny flying lizard absolutely demolish a chicken skewer. A brave little girl steps up and asks Ciela a burning question. She points and asks if Ciela is actually raising a pet lizard. Ciela laughs and plays along, nodding as the kids eagerly ask for the pet's name. She pauses, waiting to see what the tiny disguised prince will do, and he just looks up with a tiny beep. Ciela completely wings it and tells the kids his name is literally just Beep. The disguised crown prince stares at the ground, absolutely dying inside that he just got named like a kitchen appliance. Suddenly, the kids hear music starting up in the square and run off, promising to come back later for food. Ciela gently pets the little dragon, thanking Beep for being the ultimate marketing mascot. Later that evening, the guild members are completely wiped out, closing up shop after a chaotic rush. Leather hands Ciela the final sales report, looking exhausted but proud. He mentions that a chunk of their profits has already been donated to the temple, exactly as she instructed. She gives him a warm smile, praising him for a job well done. But Leather is sweating bullets, asking why they're giving away money when they're basically out of stock and spending crazy cash. He points out that there's still a tiny street stall, meaning their profits have a hard ceiling. Ciela smoothly shuts his worry down, explaining that securing a massive bag of gold was never her original goal. Her real objective is to spread the luminous brand name like wildfire, and she tells Leather to keep up the grind. Meanwhile, the arrogant blue-haired count is sitting in his fancy office, reviewing intel on Ciela. His spy confirms that Ciela is indeed the secret sponsor pulling the strings behind the new street food group. The count leans back, looking completely bored by her little side hustle. He scoffs, thinking she's going to suffer without her family's wealth now that she's reduced to peddling meat on sticks. The spy notes that their sales are high, but they're definitely still strapped for cash. The count smirks, fully aware that her own toxic family members have turned their backs on her. He swirls his drink, finding it hilarious that she thinks a tiny skewer stand will save her from ruin. He totally expects her little business venture to crash and burn, completely wiping her out once and for all. He arrogantly declares that even if they do absolutely nothing, she's destined to fail. Changing the subject, he asks about Marquis Labyrinth, noting he likes him way more than Ciela. The spy reveals the Marquis's fancy carriage completely broke down in the woods, delaying his arrival to the capital. The count sighs, super annoyed that his grand plans are getting stalled by a broken wheel. He orders his men to stay in touch and physically drag the Marquis to the capital if they have to. When asked if they should sabotage Ciela's skewer stand, the count just waves it off, wanting to sit back and watch her fail naturally. Back at the estate, Ciela is chilling on a swing with her silver-haired ally, who tells her she's been pushing herself way too hard. She brushes off his concern, saying a boss always has to keep her eyes on the prize. He gently asks if she's secretly stressing over the SEDUCED family pulling some shady moves in the background. Ciela sighs, admitting that with the count's absolute trash personality, there's zero chance he lets her run her business in peace. Ciela sighs, admitting she's totally stressed out and can't just relax with her family plotting in the background. Ray looks at her with absolute confidence, promising that if the count tries anything funny, he'll personally step in. But Ciela confesses the count isn't her main problem. She's actually terrified of her father returning to the capital. Ray calmly reassures her that it'll take a while for the Marquis to arrive, giving them plenty of time to counter his moves. Ciela looks completely confused, wondering how he knows her father is delayed since she never mentioned the carriage trouble. She jokingly asks if he went full rogue and kidnapped a messenger pigeon to intercept her mail. When Ray stays silent, her eyes widen. She accuses him of straight-up sabotaging her dad's carriage to stall his trip. Ray looks away, sheepishly admitting he didn't do anything too crazy. He just casually broke one of the wheels. He gently touches his neck, saying he just wanted to give her a little backup since she clearly needed it. He knows she's more than capable of handling herself, but he just couldn't sit back and watch her get completely wrecked by her family. Ciela stares at him, her heart skipping a beat as she finally prepares to ask the million-dollar question. She demands to know why he's going out of his way to be so incredibly nice to her. She's been dying to figure out his true motives for a while now. She presses him, wanting to know why he treats her so well when they barely know each other. Ray quickly throws his emotional walls back up, pulling the classic "it's just a contract" excuse. He claims he's just fulfilling his end of the bargain to help her break her forced engagement. Ciela agrees they have a business deal, but she's not letting him off the hook that easily. She reminds him that the whole point of their contract was for her to drop her fiancé so Ray could get his beloved Tyrell back. But she drops a massive truth bomb, pointing out that Ray doesn't actually seem to care about Tyrell at all. She exposes him, saying he didn't even glance at Tyrell during the ball, despite her being the legendary saintess with purification powers. Ciela stares him down, directly asking what was actually going through his head when he accepted her sketchy offer. Ray awkwardly averts his eyes, fully aware that his actions make zero sense to her right now. He gently grabs her hand, asking her to just give him a little more time to explain his messy feelings. He doesn't want to dump all his emotional baggage on her without being fully prepared. Ciela stays quiet, secretly terrified that his answer might actually change everything between them. She forces a smile, assuring him she's not mad and was just genuinely curious. Ray looks slightly guilty, apologizing for keeping her in the dark. Ciela smoothly brushes it off, telling him there's absolutely zero pressure to answer right away. They decide to wrap up their little garden chat and finally head back inside. Later at her secret guild office, Ciela slumps into her chair looking completely drained. She barely slept a wink, completely haunted by a nightmare where Ray's terrifying true dragon form cornered her. She aggressively rubs her temples, trying to convince herself it was just a random bad dream and not some ominous foreshadowing. Suddenly, a loud knock echoes through the room and Leather announces himself at the door. He struts in, sarcastically asking if she had fun leaving him to sell spicy chicken skewers all by himself. Ciela ignores his sass and tells him to spill the tea, so Leather reveals he has good news and bad news. He starts with the good. The rumors about their Luminous brand have absolutely blown up across high society. Everyone is hyper-focused on the mysterious new business backed by the Labyrinth family, meaning her marketing strategy was a massive W. Ciela smirks, thrilled that they're finally getting the recognition they need to scale up their operations. Leather puffs out his chest, telling her to leave the grunt work to him before Ciela asks for the bad news. He pauses, a sneaky little grin spreading across his face. He drops a bombshell, revealing that the arrogant Count SEDUCED actually reached out with a formal proposal to work together. Leather jokes that the Count offered them a blank check, teasing that the massive payout is honestly a little tempting. Seeing Ciela's death glare, he immediately cracks up, assuring her he's just trolling and will reject the offer immediately. Before she can scold him, another knock interrupts them, leaving Ciela wondering who would visit this late. A nervous guild member peeks in, apologizing for the intrusion but stating a VIP client needs to see her ASAP. Leather looks confused, asking if it's a repeat customer, and the subordinate nervously nods. The VIP is the mysterious masked blonde guy who previously showed up asking highly invasive questions about her love life. Leather is totally thrown off, realizing this guy is bad news and demands special attention. In the VIP room, the masked blonde guy glares at his pocket watch, bluntly stating that they kept him waiting. Ciela steps into the room wearing her dark guild master cloak, smoothly apologizing for the delay to keep her secret cover intact. Ciela, still in her dark guild master disguise, nervously confirms that this mysterious VIP client just wants dating advice. She stares at the masked blonde guy, trying to remember the details of their last incredibly awkward encounter. She flips through her guild journal, completely baffled that the only notes she has on this guy are literally about his love life. The guy casually mentions he tried reading the Empire's best-selling romance novels to figure things out on his own. Ciela just blanks, staring at him as he pulls out a literal romance book in the middle of a dark syndicate office. She stammers, totally thrown off that this wealthy, dangerous client is studying paperback romance like a textbook. Suddenly, it totally clicks in her head. This guy is dropping a massive bag of money for love advice because he has absolutely zero friends. Taking pity on the lonely guy, she sits back and asks him to spill the tea on his current romantic dilemma. He blushes, admitting he's gotten a lot closer to the lady he likes, and she even gave him an adorable nickname, Beep. Ciela internally chokes. She immediately realizes he's talking about her, but she plays it cool, pointing out that nicknames are a huge green flag. But the guy crosses his arms, his vibe instantly turning serious. He confesses that he's terrified because he's hiding a massive, game-changing secret from her. Ciela, knowing fully well he's the crown prince disguised as a tiny dragon, asks if this secret is really that important. He solemnly nods, looking totally weighed down by the guilt of his double life. He begs for her thorough advice on how to handle the situation, but Ciela firmly shuts down the idea of micromanaging his relationship. She drops some real wisdom, telling him he just needs to bite the bullet and tell the girl the absolute truth. She warns him that lies always come to light, and keeping secrets will absolutely nuke their relationship down the line. Taking notes, the guy suddenly asks if she's ever heard of the legendary confession attack. Ciela is completely lost, so he explains that it's when you aggressively dump your feelings on someone so they can't stop thinking about you. He passionately details the psychology, saying that once the girl knows he likes her, she'll start seeing him in a completely different light. Ciela nods along, admitting that forcing someone to hyperfixate on you is actually a pretty solid mental trap. Fired up, the guy declares he's going to gather his courage and launch a full-scale confession attack. But then he pushes his luck, asking the underground crime boss if she has any good restaurant recommendations for the big date. Ciela physically facepalms, reminding this dude that he is currently inside a criminal syndicate, not a matchmaking agency. But hey, money talks. She grabs her quill and starts scribbling down an itinerary to get him out of her hair. She hands over a list of the empire's trendiest dessert cafes and steakhouses, looking completely over it. She forces a bright customer service smile, cheering him on and wishing him the best of luck in his romantic conquest. After he leaves, Ciela breaks character, internally dying of embarrassment over the fact that she just gave out dating advice. But on the carriage ride home, the reality of the situation hits her like a ton of bricks. She remembers the soft looks Ray gave her the night before and the undeniable tension in the air. She buries her face in her hands, absolutely freaking out over how she's supposed to act around him now. If he really is gearing up to confess to her, their dynamic is about to get wildly complicated. Stepping out of the carriage, a dark thought suddenly crosses her mind. She realizes she could easily use Ray's feelings as the ultimate shield to escape her forced marriage to webtoon. If she publicly claims she's dating the crown prince, her greedy father would drop the webtoon engagement in a heartbeat. But the second the thought forms, she recoils in disgust, feeling like an absolute scumbag for even considering playing with his heart. Pushing the guilt aside, she walks into her estate, only to find her two loyal maids crying their eyes out on the floor. Ciela rushes over in a panic, demanding to know what on earth happened while she was gone. May sobs, apologizing for not coming to pick her up from the carriage. Lola looks completely devastated, weeping about being horribly betrayed by someone she deeply trusted. May angrily explains that a guy knew Lola had a crush on him, and he completely manipulated her feelings for his own gain. Ciela's blood boils. She calls the guy a total devil for taking a girl's sincere feelings for granted. She aggressively comforts them, agreeing that playing with someone's heart is the lowest form of trash behavior. She gently wipes Lola's tears, telling her to take a deep breath and compose herself. Later that night in her own bed, Ciela stares at the ceiling, feeling like a massive hypocrite. She imagines Ray looking heartbroken, completely devastated that she considered using his genuine feelings for her own political escape. She aggressively grips her hair, screaming internally to stop having such toxic, villainous thoughts. The next day, she sits at her desk, looking utterly exhausted with massive dark circles under her eyes. She realizes that after scolding the maid's manipulator, she feels incredibly guilty for almost doing the exact same thing to Ray. Deciding that romance is way too messy, Ciela vows to completely bury herself in her business and ignore the love drama for now. Ciela realizes she is completely lost when it comes to figuring out Ray's true feelings. She aggressively grabs her hair, screaming internally because she has absolutely zero clue how to act around him anymore. In the middle of all this romantic confusion, it suddenly becomes incredibly difficult for her to focus on what he has to say. She realizes that if his big secret is as important as he claims, she really shouldn't be casually listening in as a fake love counselor. She also decides she can't honestly say she likes him back, at least not yet, because she's terrified of ruining their current alliance. So she makes the ultimate executive decision. She decides to completely ghost him until she can clear her chaotic mind. She writes him a quick letter, making up a generic excuse about being way too busy to meet up. A few days later, the guild members are cheering, completely hyped that their street stall sold out yet again. Leather excitedly reports that even wealthy nobles are starting to line up for their spicy skewers. He asks Ciela if they should pack it up and head back to headquarters since everything is organized. But Ciela drops her voice, asking Leather if he's sure the area patrols are actually doing their jobs. She warns him to stay on high alert, totally paranoid that webtoon might send thugs to wreck their stall. She dismisses the rest of the crew, thanking them for their hard work. As soon as they leave, Leather points out that the local guards are slacking on their rounds. Ciela narrows her eyes, noticing the guards are deliberately leaving the park completely unmonitored for exactly 30 minutes. She realizes this is a textbook setup for an ambush and tells Leather they need to move now. They pull their hoods up, ready to remind the local thugs exactly who runs the dark underworld. Suddenly, a shady guy in an alleyway strikes a match, grinning like an absolute psycho. He tosses it and instantly a massive fire erupts, completely engulfing the luminous street stall in flames. The next morning, Leather and the crew are bowing their heads in shame, apologizing for letting the stall get destroyed. Ciela crouches by the charred ruins, noticing the attackers used oil to make sure the place burned to a crisp. She sighs, admitting she honestly expected Duval Esset to pull a dirty stunt like this. Surprisingly, she isn't even mad. She casually mentions she was getting bored of selling chicken skewers anyway. She gives her crew a reassuring smile, saying they should actually be grateful for the sabotage. The fire gives them the perfect excuse to officially close the street stall and upgrade to their next big business venture. Leather looks completely lost, wondering what kind of crazy pivot his boss has in mind this time. Ciela smirks, pointing out that the luminous brand is now famous enough to attract real investors. Fast forward, she's sitting in a luxurious parlor, formally greeting a wealthy noble couple who came to negotiate. The nobles admit they were super skeptical about investing in a random new guild, but Ciela's massive temple donations proved she's legit. Ciela smiles smoothly, telling them this is only the beginning of their incredibly profitable partnership. After securing the bag, her butler politely escorts the wealthy investors out. Once the doors close, Ciela completely drops her perfect posture, groaning about how exhausting it is to play the polite noble all day. She decides she desperately needs some fresh air before her brain completely melts. But as she steps into the hallway, she spots a young boy marching toward the door, arguing with the guards about entering without an appointment. Ciela's rushes over, demanding to know why there's a literal child causing a scene in her mansion. The boy turns around, and Ciela's eyes widen as she immediately recognizes his intense gaze. It's Duke Justice, but he looks exactly like a 10-year-old kid. He marches right up to her, acting like he absolutely owns the place. He formally introduces himself as Rublet Justice, but Ciela is too stunned to focus, internally screaming, "Why is he here?" The Justice family is legendary, known for producing absolute badasses who sacrifice their own life force to crush their enemies. Just like Ciela's family guards the labyrinth, the Justice family's sworn duty is to hunt down the evil dragon. The side effect of his insane power is that his body reverts to a child's form until he finds someone he truly wants to protect. In the original story, he finally awakened his adult form to save the heroine, Tyrael, from a dragon attack, and then became totally obsessed with her. Ciela smiles politely, trying to play it cool while greeting him. But the arrogant kid immediately butchers her name, calling her Cereal instead of Ciela. He casually sips his tea, acting incredibly haughty considering their families literally never interact. Ciela tries not to lose her temper, reminding herself that his childish form is technically her fault for changing the timeline. She takes a deep breath and directly asks the miniature Duke what he wants from her. The miniature Duke Rublet sits on the couch, casually bringing up the prominent nobles visiting Ciela lately. He wonders if she's secretly diving into some new business ventures. Ciela smoothly denies it, claiming her interests lie elsewhere. But then Rublet drops a bomb, asking about the dark-haired man she was with at the Imperial Ball. Ciela freezes, completely caught off guard. She mentally panics because Ray had explicitly wiped everyone's memories of his fake identity. But of course, the legendary Justice bloodline makes Rublet immune to the memory wipe. He explains that while the other nobles drew a blank, he distinctly remembers the guy. He stares her down, noting that the man had an incredibly ominous aura. He finds the mass amnesia highly suspicious and presses Ciela for answers. Ciela is sweating bullets internally, knowing that if the ultimate dragon hunter realizes Ray is the evil dragon, it'll be an absolute bloodbath. She decides to fully gaslight the kid, laughing and asking if he's getting his hair colors mixed up. Rublet looks at her like she's an idiot, making it clear he doesn't buy her terrible acting. She plays dumb, pretending she has no idea what he's talking about. Rublet mutters that if even she won't talk, there's a dead end. He suddenly drops the intense interrogation, casually claiming he was just curious and didn't mean to stress her out. He shifts the mood completely, apologizing for his sudden aggressive visit. Ciela looks at him, totally confused by the sudden whiplash. He pulls out a stunning piece of jewelry, offering it as a peace offering. Ciela nervously waves her hands, insisting there's no need for such an expensive gift. But Rublet aggressively insists, telling Serial she has to take it. She corrects him on her name for the 100th time. He essentially holds her hostage, stating he literally won't leave the mansion until she accepts it. Ciela sighs, realizing this stubborn kid is not going to take no for an answer. She reluctantly accepts the gorgeous, high-end necklace, realizing this definitely isn't just a random trinket. Rublet finally heads out, telling her to drop him a letter if she remembers anything about the dark-haired guy. As they walk to the door, a tiny shadow rustles in the bushes outside. Ciela glances over her shoulder, sensing something nearby. Hidden perfectly in the branches is tiny dragon Ray, secretly spying on the whole interaction. Ciela pauses at the door, asking if Rublet heard a noise. Rublet quickly brushes it off as nothing and prepares to leave. He bids Serial farewell one last time, keeping his cool exterior intact. But as soon as he steps outside, he glares back at the window, 100% positive his intuition is right and she's hiding the dragon. Inside, Ciela stares down at the new necklace with absolute dread. She realizes it's definitely a magical trap designed to react if she comes into contact with evil dragon energy. Later, Ciela meets up with Leather, asking how the guild is doing. Leather looks like a literal zombie. He complains that he's being completely exploited with overwork, and his face is literally turning gray. Ciela just laughs off his misery, jokingly daring him to report her to the underworld authorities. Changing the subject, she asks about their brand new business venture, and Leather confirms it's blowing up among the nobles. Leather admits he was stressed because Count Esset usually strictly monopolizes the noble sponsorship market. Ciela smirks like a total boss, fully confident she's going to beat Duval Esset at his own game and bankrupt him. She tells Leather she's preparing some special materials to lure the nobles to their side. She orders him to do a deep background check on all their targets, and Leather happily agrees to do what he does best. After he leaves, Ciela finally finishes her mountain of paperwork, stretching her sore neck. Just as she's ready to call it a night, a bright, glowing wisp suddenly shoots into the room. She jumps in her seat, completely startled by the sudden magical delivery. The light materializes into a fancy red envelope stamped with the literal imperial family crest. Realizing it's from Ray, she lets out a small chuckle at his flashy entrance. But the smile fades as she remembers she literally just tried to ghost him and has no idea how to deal with his feelings. Still, she knows ignoring a letter from the Crown Prince is a terrible idea. She grabs her quill and gets back to work, writing out a quick, mysterious reply to Ray. Ciela opens a magic letter from Ray, who's whining that she's too busy to see him. She coldly writes back that she has literally zero time. But Ray doesn't take the hint. He shoots back another letter saying there are so many places he wants to take her. Ciela physically facepalms, realizing the literal Crown Prince is acting like a giant, clingy golden retriever begging for attention. The letters keep piling up. He constantly asks when she'll be free, even suggesting tomorrow, but she keeps brushing him off. Then he hits her with the ultimate guilt trip, writing that it's sad because he doesn't have anyone else to spend time with. Ciela pauses, remembering that Ray is cursed to never leave the Imperial Palace unless he's using a heavy disguise. She recalls how genuinely happy he looked the last time they went out to the market together. Reading his little crying emoji on the letter, she starts feeling incredibly guilty. She tries to physically shake the thoughts away, telling herself to ignore his incredibly handsome, pitiful face. Her inner thoughts start battling it out. One side argues that dating a handsome, kind crown prince is a massive win. But her logical side completely shuts it down, worried that people's feelings change way too fast for her to risk getting attached. Sticking to her guns, she writes a final, firm note telling him to just go to sleep. Ray reads her rejection letter in his dark room, a small, mysterious smile creeping onto his face. The very next day, Ciela is back to her business grind. Her butler informs her that Earl Kettleton is scheduled to arrive soon. She sips her tea like an absolute boss, ordering the staff to escort the Earl to the VIP reception room. But before she can even set her cup down, a knock echoes through the door. The butler opens it, formally announcing the Earl's arrival, but the guy walking in has jet black hair and piercing red eyes. Ciela freezes, her heart dropping as she instantly recognizes his magical scent. She jumps out of her seat, absolutely flabbergasted. It's Ray, the crown prince literally hijacked her business meeting. The butler quickly excuses himself, perfectly aware that the real Earl Kettleton is currently knocked out cold in a carriage somewhere. Ciela marches up to him, demanding to know what on earth he thinks he's doing. Ray smoothly deflects, stepping closer and asking why she won't do business with him instead. He drops the smug act, gently grabbing her hand and begging her not to avoid him anymore. He smiles softly, saying the weather is way too nice for her to be cooped up inside working. Ciela internally screams, totally frustrated that he's weaponizing his sad puppy dog eyes against her. She tries to hold her ground, but her resolve is already crumbling. Ray hits her with a heavy sigh, looking down like a totally defeated man. He whispers that without her, he's completely alone, completely shattering her defenses. Ciela folds like a cheap lawn chair. She just can't bring herself to kick him out when he looks that sad. Giving up the fight, she flashes a genuine smile and agrees to spend the day with him. Fast forward, Ray brings her to a ridiculously fancy dessert shop in the capital. Ciela looks around, surprised, and asks if he genuinely likes sweets. Ray awkwardly stammers, sweating bullets, and quickly pivots to asking why she likes it, specifically bringing up their famous green grape tart. Ciela just laughs at how seriously he's taking a pastry run and happily agrees to order it. The waiter brings out a glistening, perfectly baked grape tart that looks absolutely heavenly. Ciela happily takes a bite, admitting she hasn't treated herself to eating out in forever. She playfully offers him a bite, but Ray looks completely distracted, intensely glaring at a hidden note in his hand. Ciela devours the tart, completely oblivious to his internal panic. The rest of the date is an absolute movie. They grab crepes outside and hit up a legendary high-end steakhouse. Everything is delicious, but as they walk off the meal, Ciela starts piecing some clues together. She realizes this entire day, from the grape tart to the steakhouse, is the exact date course she recommended to her masked client. Her face erupts into a massive blush as she realizes she literally planned her own romantic ambush. Ray notices her totally zoning out and gently asks if something is bothering her. She frantically denies it, internally spiraling. As the sun starts to go down, Ray softly asks if they can go watch the sunset together. Ciela tries to be responsible, pointing out that it's getting late and they should probably head back. But Ray pulls out his ultimate trump card again, mentioning how he never got to enjoy simple things like this growing up. Hearing that, Ciela instantly caves, agreeing to stay out just a tiny bit longer. They stand on a beautiful balcony overlooking the sky. She asks if the sunset is as amazing as he hoped. But Ray isn't even looking at the sky. He stares directly into her eyes and smoothly whispers, "It's beautiful." Absolute gigachad move. Ciela smiles, her heart fluttering as she totally agrees that the sunset is stunning. But Ray steps closer, looking a little insecure, and asks if she genuinely enjoyed the day with him. Ciela gives him a soft, reassuring look, thanking him for letting her escape her boring noble business for a while. Suddenly, the wind picks up, blowing a flurry of leaves right between them. Ray gently reaches out and brushes a stray leaf out of Ciela's hair, sending an instant jolt of tension between them. Ciela flushes bright red, stuttering a thank you and asking why he's been staring at her so intensely all day. She tells him his gaze feels incredibly expectant, like he's waiting for her to do something. Ray's expression softens, and he admits there's something huge he needs to get off his chest. He stares deeply into her eyes, looking totally vulnerable as he says it involves both of them. Ciela's heart starts racing. She thinks this is it, he's finally going to drop the confession attack. But before he can even start, the sky completely betrays him and it starts pouring rain. They frantically run to an outdoor pavilion to escape the sudden downpour. They make it to cover, but now they're standing painfully close, completely soaked, and the tension is absolutely suffocating. Ciela internally screams, totally overwhelmed by how awkward the vibe just got. Trying to play it cool, she forces a laugh, blaming the weird weather on the approaching summer. She shivers slightly in her soaked dress, suggesting they just wait out the storm before heading home. Without hesitating, Ray takes off his heavy coat and gently drapes it over her shoulders. Ciela tries to refuse, worried he's going to catch a cold in just his wet shirt. But Ray completely brushes her off, looking at her with an intense gaze that makes her feel like she's about to be swept away. The silence stretches until Ray finally breaks it, returning to the heavy topic they were discussing before the rain. Ciela's breath hitches as he locks eyes with her, clearly determined to finish what he started. She completely panics, mentally screaming that she wants to run away and avoid this conversation at all costs. His longing gaze is just way too intense, and she knows exactly what he's about to say. She realizes she can't keep dodging his feelings forever, she has to face this head-on. She desperately asks if he can just listen to her story first before he drops his massive confession. She admits she purposely avoided the topic, hoping that if she just played dumb, things would somehow magically work themselves out. But she knows hiding from the truth isn't going to fix anything. She confesses that she isn't nearly as brave or honest with herself as she originally thought. She tells him she always puts up a strong front, but deep down, she's terrified of getting hurt and struggling alone. She's totally terrified of what will happen to their dynamic once they cross that romantic line. She's scared things will completely change. Looking him dead in the eye, she begs for just a little more time to gather her courage before she hears him out. She promises not to avoid him anymore, vowing to seriously think hard about her feelings. She tells him she needs to figure out exactly what she feels for him before they take the next massive step. Ray's eyes soften, clearly moved by her brutal honesty. He tells her that just knowing she genuinely cares about his feelings is more than enough to make him happy. He promises to wait as long as it takes for her to be completely sure, calling himself a pretty patient guy. But he warns her with a sly smirk that he isn't just going to sit around passively. He vows to do absolutely everything in his power to completely win her over while she's figuring things out. He gently squeezes her hand, asking if that arrangement works for her, and she gives him a soft, relieved nod. Meanwhile, back at the Labyrinth estate, a teacup clatters against its saucer as the storm rages outside. Tyrael sits in her luxurious room, looking slightly guilty as she tells someone they really shouldn't have braved the heavy rain to visit her. A dark figure stands by the window, completely unfazed by the miserable weather. It's the fake maid. She completely manipulates Tyrael, claiming she braved the storm just because she genuinely likes her so much. Tyrael totally eats it up, thrilled to finally have someone acting like they're strictly on her side. The maid promises she can pull some strings to help Tyrael, telling her to get ready to reclaim everything that was stolen from her. And by stolen, she clearly means everything taken by Ciela Labyrinth. The maid starts heavily gaslighting Tyrael, convincing her that Ciela stole all the wealth, status, and attention that rightfully belonged to her. She tells Tyrael to think back carefully on all of Ciela's supposedly helpful actions. She twists the narrative, claiming Ciela originally wanted to break the SEDUCED engagement, but suddenly became totally obsessed with Duval just to spite Tyrael. The maid insists that Ciela faked her support, only to orchestrate that massive public humiliation at the ball to completely ruin Tyrael's reputation. Tyrael listens intently, completely buying into the fake maid's toxic narrative. She angrily clenches her fists, convincing herself that Ciela deliberately set her up to fail in front of the entire noble society. The maid gently pats Tyrael's hand, feeding her ego and calling her a pitiful victim. With a sinister glow in her eyes, the maid promises to help Tyrael get exactly what she deserves. She promises to elevate Tyrael to the highest, most honorable position in the entire empire. As the maid turns away, she smirks, thinking Tyrael is genuinely stupid for being manipulated so easily. The maid reveals her true goal. She just needs Tyrael's purification abilities to keep the crown prince entirely under her control. Meanwhile, back at the Labyrinth estate, Ciela completely zones out, staring blankly out the window. She can't stop thinking about her incredibly intense, rain-soaked encounter with Ray the day before. Suddenly, she snaps back to reality, burying her totally flushed face in her hands and screaming internally. She feels absolutely mortified that he practically confessed to her and promised to wait for her answer. She physically slumps over her chair, completely panicking over how she's supposed to face him now that all her walls are down. She remembers his desperately sad expression when he begged her not to avoid him. She aggressively shakes her head, deciding she can't hide in her room forever like a coward. Later that day, Ciela's carriage pulls up to an absolutely massive, stunning mansion. As soon as she steps out, she warmly greets Lady Arya, an incredibly elegant noblewoman. Arya smiles brightly, thanking Ciela for helping her secure a smooth, comfortable life after her messy divorce. Arya happily links arms with Ciela, excitedly pulling her inside to catch up on some major gossip. As they walk through the stunning garden, Ciela admits she's completely shocked by the massive donation Arya made to her guild. Arya smoothly replies that the money is nothing compared to the help Ciela provided during her darkest time. She reassures Ciela that there are zero strings attached, she just genuinely wants to see the Luminous Guild succeed. With a sly smile, Arya adds that she's also a pretty sharp businesswoman who knows a great investment when she sees one. As they walk up the steps, Arya makes a bold promise to pull some strings and connect Ciela with the highest-ranking nobles. She confidently states she has the perfect strategy to launch the guild into the stratosphere. Arya explains the plan. Ciela needs to earn the highly coveted Summer Star, a prestigious award given directly by the Empress. Ciela frowns, pointing out that winning the star requires making a massive, undeniably huge contribution to the Empire. Arya acknowledges the challenge but insists it's totally possible if they play their cards right. She holds Ciela's hands, hyping her up and urging her to speed up the expansion of her business. Changing the subject, Arya mentions she has one tiny, slightly awkward favor to ask. Outside the mansion gates, a scruffy, bespectacled guy is having an absolute meltdown, terrified to show his face. He aggressively rubs his head, completely confused as to why the powerful daughter of a marquis specifically requested to meet him. His anxiety takes over and he decides to totally bail until a sharp voice stops him dead in his tracks. He freezes like a deer in headlights as Ciela sternly orders him to turn right back around. Ciela gives him a dazzling, borderline intimidating smile, welcoming Ipel to the estate. Ipel stammers nervously, fully convinced she called him there to scold him or interrogate him. But Ciela gracefully waves her fan, inviting him inside for a private chat. In her past life, she read that Ipel was a literal genius inventor, even if his social skills are clearly garbage. She watches him shake like a leaf, finding it hilarious that this incredibly awkward guy is destined for greatness. She knows for an absolute fact that Ipel is going to become a legendary wizard who will go down in history. They sit in her parlor, and Ciela gently tells him to stop sweating through his robes and just relax. Ipel stammers that relaxing is impossible when he's literally sitting across from one of the most powerful nobles in the empire. Ciela playfully points out that he isn't in trouble, so there's absolutely no reason to act so suspiciously. Ipel finally vents his frustration, explaining that all the other nobles completely laughed him out of the room when he pitched his invention. He looks down at his teacup, genuinely shocked that someone of Ciela's status actually gave him the time of day. He immediately gets paranoid again, wondering if this incredibly nice treatment is actually a complex trap. Ciela quickly shuts down his panic, assuring him she's genuinely interested in his unreleased products. She leans forward asking about a specific item called a scroll and offers to fully fund its development. Ipel violently shoots up from the couch, his eyes wide with pure, unfiltered joy. Thrilled that someone finally believes in him, he aggressively unrolls his blueprints and starts passionately ranting about his magic paper. He excitedly explains that his scroll is a massive game changer, a magical item that lets wizards store raw mana, completely eliminating the need to chug heavy, nasty potions. Ipel excitedly explains his new invention, a scroll that instantly restores mana when torn. But his excitement quickly fades. He admits everyone thought he was a scammer and kicked him out to the curb. Without any investors, his project has completely stalled out. He explains that the experiment requires a very specific ore to work. The purple-haired lady cuts in, correctly guessing he needs a mineral called Raeliana. Ipel is absolutely floored, wondering how she knows about a supposedly useless impurity. She casually describes it as a rare black ore found in gem mines. He looks at her like she just read his mind. She drops the bombshell that her business partner literally owns a mine. Ipel pushes up his glasses, stunned by the prospect of unlimited resources. She knows from the original story that Raeliana is the ultimate key to this invention. Getting hyped, Ipel claims he can finish the project in half a year. But her gaze turns icy as she hits him with a crazy deadline: 1 month. She orders him to finish the scroll development in just 30 days. She explains the Summer Star Award ceremony is coming up fast, and she'll handle the material supply. But Ipel nervously rubs his neck, revealing one final roadblock. He shows her a magic formula written in an ancient, undecipherable language. It's over 1,000 years old, leaving them completely stuck. She wonders if her contact later could somehow figure it out. Suddenly, a tiny black dragon named Lord Ray taps on her window. She rushes over, shocked to see the little guy fluttering there. She lets him in, completely melting over his adorable form. She notices the fancy red ribbon tied around his neck. The dragon gives her the smuggest little smile. She holds him up, playfully accusing him of weaponizing his cuteness. She is literally taking critical damage from how adorable he is. The dragon hops onto her desk, ready to get down to business. He grabs a quill and starts writing on a piece of paper. He asks who the strange man in her office was, acting a bit jealous. She explains Ipel is just a wizard helping her expand her business with magic scrolls. She shows Lord Ray the ancient document explaining the major roadblock. The dragon stares closely at the ancient text. Half joking, she asks if he knows anyone who is 1,000 years old. Without hesitating, the dragon taps the paper. She picks it up and her jaw absolutely drops. She looks at him in pure disbelief, asking how he solved it so fast. She realizes this little guy actually speaks the ancient language fluently. Ipel had sworn no one alive could read this text. She squints at the dragon, wondering if it's really that simple. She figures being a magical dragon comes with some insane perks. Snapping back to reality, she immediately calls for her maid. Her maid steps into the room, ready for orders. She asks her to urgently deliver a letter to Ipel. Cuddling the dragon, she happily announces that all the formulas are solved. Later, she arrives at a sketchy-looking house on the edge of town. She cautiously pushes the creaky wooden door open. Ipel greets her, but he looks like an absolute zombie with massive dark circles under his eyes. She completely ignores his sleep-deprived state and steps inside. She enters his messy lab, ready to finally put the ancient formula to the test. Ipel stares at the paper in absolute disbelief, instantly recognizing the formula. The lady smiles and hands him the fully completed solution. Ipel realizes all the ancient text has been swapped out for numbers, giving him the exact synthesis formula for Raeliana. Sweating nervously, he asks if she translated this all by herself. She shakes her head, admitting it wasn't her. She holds out her little dragon, completely deadpanning that her pet lizard solved it. Ipel looks like his brain just short-circuited, stammering about a flying lizard reading ancient languages. She casually confirms it and asks if the math actually checks out. Ipel completely geeks out, sprinting back to his workbench to test the new formula. He carefully measures out the Raeliana powder, drops it into a glowing green solution, and dips a piece of paper inside. Suddenly, a massive, blinding flash of light completely engulfs the room. Thick smoke fills the lab as Ipel slumps against the counter. Coughing, she asks if he just accidentally blew up the lab. But Ipel just sits there in a daze, holding a glowing black piece of paper. He suddenly jumps up, shouting that it was a total success. He praises her, explaining that without her help, he would have been labeled a complete fraud and vanished from history. Overwhelmed with gratitude, he grabs her hands, calling her his ultimate savior. But Lord Ray isn't having any of that and absolutely smacks Ipel in the face with his tail. Ipel immediately backs off, apologizing for overstepping. She awkwardly brushes it off, explaining that her little pet is just super territorial. Ipel is so mesmerized by his completed scroll that he completely tunes her out. Now that the product is finished, she asks how he plans to market it, teasing him about his awful door-to-door sales pitch. She tells him to leave the heavy lifting to her while she finds the perfect stage to debut his masterpiece. Her gaze turns sharp as she orders him to stay as quiet as a dead rat until then. Later on, she reflects on the next steps, realizing her current reach is way too small. She knows she needs a platform with massive noble influence to make this work. Suddenly, her maid knocks frantically on the door, announcing a huge delivery. The maid bursts in holding a massive stack of fancy gift boxes, all sent from one person. Looking at the card, the maid reveals they are all from someone named Ibschlechty. The lady sighs, heading over to check the ridiculous pile of presents. To her total shock, the boxes are stuffed full of top-tier, expensive health supplements. Right on cue, little Ray holds up a giant red pill, but she grimaces, refusing to eat it. The dragon aggressively shoves the pill at her, squeaking his demands. She finally caves, taking the medicine with a heavy sigh just to appease him. She wonders where he even got all this stuff, assuring him she's already perfectly healthy. Changing the subject, she asks if it's annoying to be stuck in his tiny dragon form since he can't talk. Since it's late and no one is around, she suggests he transform back into a human. But then her mind immediately flashes back to how insanely attractive his human form is. Getting super flustered, she quickly backpedals and tells him to just stay as a cute little lizard. Trying to hide her blushing face, she urgently shifts the conversation back to business. She explains she's still hunting for a high-profile location that attracts powerful people from all over. The dragon grabs his quill and quickly scribbles down a suggestion for an upcoming charity auction. She recognizes the hosts as the Cherish family highly influential nobles who will definitely draw a massive crowd. But she hesitates, asking if Rei is okay with dealing with the Empress's faction. She remembers from the original plot that the Empress and Rei are bitter political enemies. Going to this party means walking straight into a den of nobles actively conspiring against him. Cradling his little face, she tells him they don't have to risk it just for her sake. She pauses, waiting to see what he wants to do. Rei gently places his tiny paw on her hand, asking her to promise him one thing: he wants her by his side that day. Touched by his trust, she gives a warm smile and agrees to face the noble sharks together. The night of the Cherish Foundation auction finally arrives, and the grand hall is absolutely packed. A group of snooty nobles gathers around, gossiping about how the Luminous Summit is hosting the big event. They wonder if the prestigious Labyrinth family is backing them, joking that they better bring something incredibly valuable to match the Foundation's high standards. One of the ladies snickers, doubting a brand new business could ever pull that off. Right on cue, Ciela Labyrinth steps into the light, greeting the gossiping nobles with a flawless smile. Internally, she completely rolls her eyes at their arrogance. She knows these exact people will be crying and begging her to sell them the mana scroll later. But she brushes off the drama, needing to make sure the auction preparations are going smoothly. Suddenly, she freezes in her tracks, spotting a silver-haired man across the room. It's Duke Rublet Justice, a guy notorious for absolutely despising social events. He quietly steps right up behind her, completely startling her. She awkwardly laughs it off, trying to play it cool. The Duke greets her calmly, acting like they're old friends. He stares intently at her chest, pointing out that she actually wore the necklace he gifted her. She remembers her maid practically forcing her to wear it because it matched her dress so well. The Duke gives a tiny smile, telling her it looks absolutely perfect on her. Ciela blinks, completely thrown off guard. She wonders since when this icy Duke became the type to just hand out random compliments. Feeling the weird vibes, she quickly tries to excuse herself, saying she has auction duties to attend to. But before she can take a step, a familiar voice calls her name from behind. It's Lord Rei in his human form, going by the alias of Shukti, stepping right between them. The Duke squints, finding it super suspicious that he doesn't recognize the name of a supposedly high-ranking noble. He realizes his passive charm magic isn't working on the stranger, deducing he must be an unawakened descendant of his own bloodline. Without hesitating, Rei pulls Ciela close by the waist and glares directly at the Duke. He completely ignores the Duke's status and warns him to back off. His red eyes flash as he tells the Duke to step away from Ciela while he's still asking nicely. The Duke's eyes widen in realization as the necklace on Ciela's chest starts leaking dark magic. The artifact is designed to detect evil energy, instantly exposing Rei's true identity as the evil dragon. Rei doesn't even flinch, darkly suggesting they take this conversation somewhere a little more private. Seeing the tension hitting a boiling point, Ciela quickly steps in to defuse the bomb. She subtly threatens the Duke, reminding him that causing a massive scene here would be a terrible look for his reputation. The Duke clenches his jaw, realizing he can't take on both the evil dragon and the Labyrinth family in the middle of a crowded ballroom. He backs down, assuming her family must have some secret method to keep the dragon under control. He gives her a chilling warning, telling her to be careful hanging around a monster. Since the dragon isn't actively going berserk, he agrees to let it slide just for tonight. But as he walks away, he promises he'll be keeping a very close eye on her. The second he's out of earshot, Ciela sags against Rei like a rag doll, admitting she thought they were about to get arrested. She looks up to see Rei giving her the softest, most genuine smile. He tells her he can't help but smile because she actually stepped up to protect him. She blushes furiously, completely stressed out about making an enemy of the Duke. But Rei just lanes in, telling her that standing her ground made her look even cooler. He pulls her in dangerously close, promising to repay her for protecting him tonight, even if it costs his whole body. She gets insanely flustered by his absolute riz, but they are suddenly interrupted by the auctioneer's booming voice. The announcer draws everyone's attention to the main balcony, declaring it's time for the highlight of the night. Rei gently holds her hands, telling her it's time to show her masterpiece to the world. With her confidence completely restored, she gives a sharp smirk. The time for hiding in the shadows is officially over. She steps away looking like an absolute boss, ready to unveil the project that will change history. She heads out to pick up the real star of today's show. Meanwhile, out on the stage, Ipel is clutching his notes and shaking like a chihuahua, completely terrified of the massive crowd. The crowd immediately starts buzzing, completely confused by the word scroll. Ipel stands tall, explaining that it's a small piece of paper that stores real mana. A noble raises his hand, skeptically asking if normal people can actually use magic with it. The crowd mutters, remembering that a world where everyone uses magic only existed in the ancient kingdom destroyed by the evil dragon. One guy straight up calls it a scam, challenging Ipel to prove it. Ipel smirks and glances up at Ciela, knowing this is exactly how they planned it. Playing the crowd perfectly, Ipel asks for a volunteer to come up and try it out. Marquis Wilhelm steps up, boasting that since everyone knows he despises magic, he's the perfect lie detector. Ipel hands him a basic fire scroll, giving him quick instructions on how to trigger it. The Marquis sneers at the tiny paper, fully expecting to expose them as total frauds. He dramatically tears the scroll, threatening to make them a laughingstock, but instantly roaring flames burst from his hands. The Marquis stares at his glowing palms, completely flabbergasted as the anti-magic noble literally casts a spell. The entire ballroom erupts into absolute chaos. Nobles are screaming, throwing their hands up and begging to invest all their money. Sweating nervously, Ipel tries to calm the mob, announcing that all distribution goes through the Luminous Summit. He redirects the frenzy to Ciela, revealing she holds all the authority. In a split second, the greedy nobles completely swarm her, begging for a chance to strike a deal. Ciela looks like she's about to be trampled, internally screaming for someone to save her from this zombie horde of nobles. Later, Ciela manages to escape to a quiet balcony, panting and admitting she seriously thought she was going to die in there. Ray steps out from the shadows, teasingly asking how she could die and leave him behind. She gives a tired but happy smile, waving it off as a joke. He warmly congratulates her on the massive success, but she immediately credits him for solving the ancient formula. She teases him about how hard he had to work to write it all down with his tiny, cute dragon hands. Ray coughs awkwardly, reminding her that he's an adult man and definitely not cute. But he quickly softens, looking out at the night sky and telling her he'll never forget tonight. He turns back to her with intense eyes, reminding her that she called him special. The playful mood completely shifts as he leans in, ready to ask his real question. He asks if he can finally hear her answer to his previous request. With perfect gentlemanly charm, he extends his hand and asks her to dance. Ciela looks at his outstretched hand, knowing there's absolutely no reason to say no. She gives him a breathtaking smile, completely melting at his sweet request. She steps into his arms, feeling her heart pound as they hold each other during her happiest moment. With the cool breeze blowing and the faint party music playing, they dance perfectly together under the moonlight. Looking at Ray, she realizes she finally has someone who genuinely celebrates her wins. She reflects on her transmigration, remembering how her whole life used to be a desperate struggle just to avoid a tragic death. But looking into his eyes, she knows everything has changed. Ray pulls her close, resting his chin on her head as they sway. Surrounded by blooming flowers, she admits to herself that she is finally completely happy. Meanwhile, across the Empire, news of the magic scroll spreads like absolute wildfire. A maid reports the insane hype to the Empress, noting that a mana-less magic tool is breaking all the rules. The Empress is highly intrigued that a young lady like Ciela is the mastermind behind the distribution network instead of a veteran wizard. The maid assumes the Empress is furious because Ciela is stealing the spotlight right before the Summer Star Award ceremony. She figures the Empress wanted her favorite puppet, Tyrell Puratina, to win the prestigious title. But the Empress just smirks, highly amused that Ciela managed to create her own massive wave of influence. The maid is totally confused, wondering why the Empress would ever consider giving the award to Ciela. The Empress bursts into maniacal laughter, completely dropping her royal composure. She looks at her maid like she's an idiot, scoffing at the idea of handing the prize to a foolish child like Puratina. Taking a sip of her tea, she explains that Puritina's purification powers just make her a convenient tool to control the crown prince. But the Empress's eyes glow with a sinister red light, stating that it's far too dangerous to rely on just one pawn. She needs a backup plan, bringing up the fact that they've been spying on Ciela for a while now. The maid confirms that Puratina is failing her mission, leaving the Empress grinning at the prospect of dragging Ciela right onto her chessboard. Back at the palace, the maid reports that Ciela has been sneaking out a lot more lately. The Empress smirks, already piecing together what Ciela is up to. She reveals her true, villainous plot. She wants to use Ciela to drive the Crown Prince completely insane and turn him into the evil dragon. Once the Crown Prince is out of the way, her own son can easily snatch the throne. To set the trap, she orders her maid to put Ciela and Puratina on the shortlist for the Summer Star Award. The Empress glances around her lavish room, fully confident in her scheme. She wonders if Ciela will be foolish enough to choose love or smart enough to chase absolute power. Meanwhile, Ciela finally returns to her guild, getting instantly swarmed by her excited staff. She warmly apologizes for being away so long, happy to see her team again. She heads into the back office to check on her guild manager later. But she finds him completely passed out on his desk like a zombie. Without hesitating, she absolutely smacks him awake, telling him to stop slacking. Later jumps up totally offended, yelling about how overworked he is. He dramatically threatens to quit and join another guild because she dumps all the paperwork on him. But the second Ciela mentions a salary raise, he completely changes his tune, swearing absolute loyalty. Snapping back to business, later says he has some massive news to share. He hands her a sealed envelope, explaining it's a leaked document that will be officially announced soon. Ciela carefully opens it, wondering what could be so urgent. It's the official shortlist for the Summer Star Award, and she actually made the cut. Later proudly notes that everything is going exactly according to her master plan. But instead of celebrating, Ciela crushes the paper in her hand. She stares at the list, getting a seriously ominous vibe that she's walking straight into a trap. The Summer Star is the highest honor a lady can receive in the Empire. But the judging criteria is basically non-existent, meaning the Empress just hands it to whoever she wants to politically favor. Fast forward to the day of the ceremony, Ciela arrives at the Imperial Palace looking absolutely stunning. She knows the invention of the Mana Scroll makes her the obvious choice to win, but her gut tells her otherwise. Before she can even get inside, she bumps into Puratina, the original female lead of the story. Ciela tries to quickly walk past her, desperate to avoid any drama. But Puratina stops her, putting on a sweet smile and congratulating her on the nomination. Then Puratina nervously asks if Ciela is still mad at her. She loudly apologizes for a past incident, making sure the entire crowd can hear her playing the victim. She even starts squeezing out crocodile tears, putting on a flawless performance. The surrounding nobles immediately start whispering, making Ciela look like the absolute bad guy. Realizing she's being totally played, Ciela suddenly pulls Puratina into a tight hug. With the crowd fooled by the friendly embrace, Ciela whispers a sharp warning into Puritina's ear. She sarcastically praises Puratina for manipulating the public into feeling sorry for her. Ciela reveals she knows all about Puritina's secret trips to the slums to do flashy charity work with her purification magic. Puritina's innocent act completely drops, and she gives a sly, arrogant smile. She mocks Ciela for being so blind to how easily the public can be manipulated. Puratina coldly states that as long as you do a few good deeds, the foolish masses will completely forgive anything. Instead of getting mad, Ciela just smiles back, looking totally relieved. She admits she used to feel guilty for disliking Puratina, thinking she was genuinely a kind person. But seeing Puratina finally show her true, toxic colors takes all that guilt completely off her shoulders. Puratina turns away, ready to head inside the Grand Hall. As she watches her leave, Ciela realizes she feels awful for her guild's hard work. She knows that despite the scroll's massive success, the Empress has already decided Puratina will win. The Empress needs Puritina's purification powers to control the Crown Prince, meaning she has to elevate her status. Ciela realizes this whole ceremony is just a rigged game, and the winner was decided from the start. The announcer suddenly booms over the crowd, demanding everyone's attention. The doors swing open, and the Empress steps into the hall, radiating absolute boss energy as she prepares to execute her master plan. Ciela watches the Empress address the crowd, noting how perfectly she fakes her kind reputation. The Empress praises all the noble ladies, claiming they've all shown dazzling wisdom this year. But she dramatically sighs, stating it makes her sad that she can only choose one winner. Ciela stares at her, trying to decipher the hidden trap behind that villainous smile. The Empress finally announces the winner, and the room gasps as she calls out, "Lady Labyrinth." Ciela's jaw hits the floor. "Wait, her, not Tyrell." As she walks up the grand stairs, warning bells are absolutely blaring in her head. The Empress publicly praises Ciela for inventing the Mana scroll and elevating the entire empire's honor. A royal aide brings over a velvet box holding the prestigious Summer Star badge. The Empress personally pins it to Ciela's dress, congratulating her on the massive win. To top it off, she extends an exclusive invitation for Ciela to join her for private tea. Ciela forces a polite smile, bowing her head and playing along with the imperial charade. The other noble ladies are practically foaming at the mouth with jealousy over the royal invite. Ciela knows this is exactly the outcome she wanted, but her gut is screaming that something is horribly wrong. She watches the Empress smile, feeling a cold chill run straight down her spine. After the ceremony, Ciela mingles with the crowd, graciously accepting their fake congratulations. But through the crowd, she catches a glimpse of Tyrell, who looks completely devastated. Even while politely chatting with the guests, Ciela's mind is racing a mile a minute. That heavy, ominous feeling just won't go away. Suddenly, Tyrell confronts her, bitterly demanding to know why the Empress picked her instead. Before Ciela can even answer, the royal aide steps right between them. He formally reminds Ciela to prepare herself for her upcoming tea time with the Empress. With a polite but firm tone, he essentially dismisses her from the palace grounds. Ciela walks away, glancing back and wondering what kind of scheme those two are cooking up. Sitting alone in her carriage ride home, her anxiety officially goes into overdrive. She knows the Empress is dragging her into a deadly political game, but she resolves to outsmart her just like she did with her past enemies. Finally, she arrives back at her own massive estate under the moonlight. Her maid immediately rushes over, noticing her mistress looks pale and exhausted. Ciela plays it off as simple fatigue, asking to just be left alone in her room to rest. The second the heavy wooden doors click shut, her entire confident facade crumbles. She completely collapses onto the floor, admitting she was absolutely terrified the whole time. She slumps against the wall, mentally and physically drained from surviving the royal snake pit. But suddenly she hears a very familiar, tiny sound. Little Lord Ray comes swooping into the room like a cute, scaly missile. Ciela's eyes light up instantly as he flutters right over to her. She scoops the baby dragon up, nuzzling him affectionately. Cradling him to her cheek, she admits she had a ridiculously hard day. Ray squeaks in panic, clearly worried sick about his human. She lets out a soft laugh, feeling the heavy weight finally lift off her chest. Holding him close, she realizes just how incredibly comforting his presence is. All that cold, suffocating tension from the palace instantly vanishes into thin air. She reflects on how Ray has always been her ultimate safe space. In this unpredictable, crazy world, he's the only one who gives her real confidence to keep fighting. She sits up on the couch, laughing as Ray bravely climbs onto her shoulder. He starts giving her a tiny dragon massage, but she squirms because his little claws are absolutely tickling her to death. Still, she lets the literal evil dragon give her a shoulder rub, deeply touched by how hard he's trying to help. Getting serious again, she updates him on the insane events at the palace. She drops the bombshell that the Empress awarded her the Summer Star and personally invited her to tea. She wanted to tell Ray first so he wouldn't get jealous or misunderstand, especially since turning down the Empress is a guaranteed death wish. Hearing this, Ray gives a sharp squeak and leaps off her shoulder, clearly ready to go to war for his girl. Back in her room, little Ray frantically scrambles across the desk, looking like he's desperately searching for a pen. Ciela scoops him up, gently suggesting he transform into his human form since writing with tiny claws looks like a massive struggle. The baby dragon hesitates, a light blush dusting his scaly cheeks. She reassures him it's completely fine, remembering the time he accidentally transformed in her room before. Holding him close, she says she has something important to tell him and asks him to just stay as a dragon for now so she doesn't get nervous. But suddenly a flash of magic fills the room, and human Ray appears, blushing hard and apologizing for losing control of his form. Looking down at her, he softly points out that their fake engagement contract is basically useless now. He explains that with her massive success at the award ceremony, his family has zero leverage left to pressure him into a political marriage. He leans in dangerously close, trapping her against the couch as he asks what this means for their actual future. Ciela stares up at him, starting to say that if they end the contract now, but Ray completely panics, cutting her off before she can finish. Before he can spiral, she flips the script, softly asking if he'll stay by her side even without a fake agreement holding them together. Ray's eyes widen, totally caught off guard by her absolute riz. Without skipping a beat, he pulls her into a tight, desperate embrace, swearing he will always stay by her side no matter what. For Ciela, hearing those words is the ultimate reassurance she needed. Meanwhile, sitting alone on a fancy vanity, a magical jewelry box suddenly rattles to life, absolutely losing its mind over finally finding a brand new master who isn't Tyrell.